Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The Corver family was not starstruck, but they were not poor either. It was an average intellectual family. The head of the family, Nick Corver, worked as a math teacher at school. His wife, Sophia, worked in the village administration. Corver had a daughter, Helen. They would have been happy to give the girl a brother or sister, but the state of health did not allow Sophia to become a mother. The second time they lived amicably. In the summer, they went to the mountains, to the lake, or campgrounds as a family. And in the cold time, Corver loved to arrange family gatherings together, cooked hot pastries, or own or captive bags under fragrant aromatic tea. All remarks to each other, if any, sounded not at all offensive and were taken rather as jokes. Unlike many teenagers, Helen Corver had only heard firsthand what strained family relationships and parental misunderstandings were like. Whatever happened to her, Helen could always trust her parents and count on their help. In the family reigned love, understanding, and mutual respect. If there was something that marred the happiness of the family, it was the relationship between Nick and his mother-in-law. The situation is anecdotal, except he wouldn't be laughing. Dear Wendy apparently considered it her duty almost every day to visit them and give valuable instructions, or rather to poke her nose into everything in her field of vision. "Why is your porch wobbling?" Looking disapprovingly in the direction of her son-in-law, Wendy said, "What are you in the house for, man? It's like this every time. That the beds are not to dig, that the grass is low, that here to catch a cold." A separate topic was the closet of my wife and daughter. A real man should dress up his women. My mother-in-law insisted. When Sophia saw a beautiful dress on TV and said she wanted the same Nick. "Well, right, honestly, what do you have them wearing?" Helen looked at her tracksuit and shrugged her shoulders. It didn't escape Grandma's eyes. "You're going someplace decent, or else there's nothing to do." Solemnly, Wendy summed it up. "Mom, what do you mean by a decent place?" Sophia grinned. "A theater or a restaurant? We don't go to them." "You should." "Oh, and what though?" "Not in a tracksuit." Sophia is tempted to reply that she and her late father were not regulars at such places either, but she changes her mind. After all, Mom is Mom, and she wants her daughter to have everything she needs for a happy life. And thank God that Nick preferred to keep his mouth shut, for he didn't like conflict. Nick Corver really did not like conflicts, but adored his girls. For their sake, Corver was ready to endure anyone, including squabbling and restless mother-in-law and soft character of Nick Konstantinovich. His relatives noticed it, shook their heads, and expressed their discontent. "Yes, she's just riding you," said Betty, Nick's sister. "Mark my word, it won't end well," and she was right. It all started with Sophia's promotion. Years ago, Sophia, a college graduate, joined the local government. Simply put, she got a job as a secretary. Then she was lucky. The previous secretary was just going on maternity leave. After the position of secretary was removed from the staff schedule, Sophia was not left without a job. She became a specialist and finally reached the position of vice chairman. Her duties have increased, but also the salary became higher. And that's what prompted a new round of attacks. Wendy on Nick, on the occasion of his wife's promotion. And to you, they slaughtered a boar. The women prepared dinner, and after a shower, Corver and their relatives gathered at a generously set table. Alas, at first hearty sit-downs with the easy hand of Wendy turned into a real balaganza. During the family feast, the elderly woman drank too much and she, as they call it, was carried away. "Shame on you," she said. "A woman and like a damned and earns, by the way, more than you." Mom warned me before Sophia started that, "Mom, I'm telling the truth. Can't we deal with this truth on our own? They'll figure it out." "Nick, do you really like your job?" "I like it," my son-in-law answered briefly. "But I like it even more when my wife earns good money." The truth, Wendy continued to stir things up. "God!" exclaimed Helen, and grabbed not a single piece of meat pie and a glass of tea, went to her room. "But what's rather reproachful?" Sophia asked her mother. "By the way, Scarlett has a scarlet transitional age, and the girl very painfully perceives your." She could not find the right words and only waved her hand. If there were another person in Wendy's place, he would have realized that he had just spoiled a peaceful family holiday and hurried to smooth over the conflict. But where was it? Strong alcohol plus a quarrelsome temper. A mixture of thermonuclear girl and scandalized. And let the girl know that her daddy is a worthless man. And what makes him worthless, I wonder. Betty obeyed, who didn't mind what she said. She organically did not like her brother's mother-in-law. And the relatives suspected that the fighting woman was just waiting to have a heart-to-heart fight with Wendy. Those present froze in anticipation of not a weak performance and were not at all deceived in their expectations. The women screamed so loud that the dishes rang. "Your brother is a shit and a lowlife," Wendy said. "Yes, my brother is a good man," contended Betty belligerently. "But you're an old schemer for your own life?" "No, you're a meddler in other people's." "What did you say?" Sophia formidably asked the relative, looming over the sister of her hated brother-in-law. But the young woman from the preamble aside and nonchalantly replied that they had heard. Live themselves to live amicably, bring up a daughter, and persuaded Betty. But no. Even on a holiday, there's no peace from you. Mom, but really my son Alexander intervened. You were sitting so well, weren't you? Eggs. Chicken is very thoughtful, threatened mother, and then came to the table, defiantly poured herself a full shot glass of vodka and drank. Didn't blush. Come on. Zatsatsatsia for this is not to give. She continued savoring the crunch of the pickle. Everyone, as one, just sighed heavily. If Wendy Medvedeva had been on her own for a long time. But why does Grandma always cling to Daddy for the umpteenth time? Helen wondered. She, of course, was still quite young, and due to the lack of life experience still understood little. But she knew one thing about a husband like Nick. They are still to be found. He doesn't drink, helps his mother with the household chores, earns money. What else do you need? The girls sighed heavily. Voices, related from the hall, could not. Actually, it was mostly Wendy's grandmother who spoke. The others did not dare to try to contradict her, but it seems, unsuccessfully. All in all, fun, and so it was every holiday. The pork pie was getting cold and didn't look so appetizing, and I didn't feel like eating. And why do we have everything not like people? Helen thought, we're getting there. And the tea, which also began to cool down. This year, Corver's only daughter was finishing school. She had dreamed of becoming a journalist since 5th grade and was eagerly counting the days until graduation. And then Helen would go to university to study and work as a journalist. The girl imagined interviewing a celebrity. Her heart closed sweetly. God, but why do universities have to study for 5 whole years with a sigh? Helen thought, that's such a long time. She desperately wanted to go to another world where everything is beautiful, cultured, and there are no table scandals. To hell with all of you. Helen heard her grandmother's loud voice and shuddered. Don't listen to me, but in vain. After a while, the voices fell silent. A fuss was heard, and the girl realized with relief that the guests were leaving. When the house was quiet, Helen came out of her room. Her father was sitting in an armchair, obviously thinking hard about something. Don't be mad at Mom, Sophia said, picking up the plates from the table. I'm not. Nick shrugged and sighed, adding, I'm used to it. He looked so lost that Helen wanted to hug her father and say something nice to him. And what, in fact, prevented it? The girl came to Nick and, sitting on the windowsill of the chair, hugged him by the neck. Daddy, I love you very much. With tenderness, said Helen, and added, and you, Mom. I have the coolest parents in the world. Well, we are glad to hear that, Sophia smiled. But to make my joy complete, help me clear the table serving comrade-in-chief, replied the daughter, jokingly saluted. At that moment, all 3 of them were thinking about what a good family they had. But none of them suspected what changes awaited her. Sophia started her new position. Nick continued to sow the reasonable, good, eternal, and indoctrinate young minds with theorems and logarithms. And Helen dreamed of a career as a journalist. It seemed like it would be like that for many years to come. But life arranged otherwise. After a staff meeting in the district administration, Sophia went to a cafe for a snack. She made an order, and having taken a table in a secluded corner of the hall with an appetite began to eat at You Are Not Busy? With a polite smile asked a solid man about 50 years old, dressed in a dark gray suit with thin stripes. Sophia shook her head. And you are the new deputy head of the administration of the village, aren't you? The man asked. That's right. Why is it nice to see another spectacular woman in such a responsible position? I forgot what's your name. Sorry, it's just a lot of names, surnames, and patronymics to memorize. Sophia Corver. She introduced herself. Oh, nice to meet you. The man stretched out. Well, I'm the head of Citizen Services. Thomas Parker. You've heard of him. Sophia nodded with a faint smile. Well, that's great. That day, the colleagues chatted and separated. When an administration employee came in, she knew Parker, of course. When Sophia was a specialist, she traveled to the administration office once a month with a report and sometimes ran into him in the hallway. Parker couldn't help but know Sophia by sight. After all, in so many years of work, everyone had managed to be attracted to each other. However, it had only now come to a personal acquaintance. Sophia had heard from colleagues that Parker was a womanizer. It was common for him to fix a young secretary, which, by the way, periodically changed. At one time, there were rumors that one of the secretaries was forced to resign at the insistence of her husband. It was rumored that one of the secretaries was forced to resign at the insistence of her husband, who had somehow found out that the young wife was having an affair with the head of the Department for Work with Citizens. It seems that Thomas was married twice, and from each wife he had a child. Either way, his first wife, Emily, had a great career in the same system and made it to the regional administration. Sophia had already forgotten about that lunch at the staff meeting, because she had so much work to do that she had no time to remember. And what was there to remember? It was just an ordinary business lunch, of which there would be many more. Hello, is Sophia Corver there? She heard a vaguely familiar voice. I'm listening, she answered. Oh, Sophia here. This is Thomas Parker. Remember him? Yes, of course. In a discreet, businesslike manner, Sophia replied. What do you want? I'd like to make an appointment with you in the same formal tone, he said, and felt it necessary to add. A business meeting, of course. Your head is on vacation. On vacation. She confirmed it. Well then, all questions I solve with you as with, and oh, okay. What is it you'd like to discuss with me? Sophia, don't get your hopes up. With a slight chuckle in his voice, Parker replied. We'll talk about it when we meet. I'll see you at 3 p.m. When Sophia went to the reception desk, the receptionist was absent. Strange, she thought, and knocked quietly on the office door. Yes, yes, Sophia heard, a cheerful voice. Parker, and opened the door. Sophia, you've already arrived, he asked, and pointing to a soft chair next to a beautifully shaped magazine table gallantly spoke, have a seat. I will now. Sophia obediently sat down, and Thomas went into a funny room, which apparently served as a kind of kitchen, and came back with the payment and a bottle of champagne, not cheap, by the way. But there, he smiled. That seems to be it now. What's all this for? Sophia asked, and looking at the table, in the very center stood a small fruitcake, which, as far as she knew, could only be purchased in a restaurant. In addition to the cake, there were caviar cakes on the table, 3 different salads. What for? Thomas smiled broadly. It's a business meeting. I find it easier to solve issues at a set table, so to speak, in a trusting atmosphere. What's cultured and efficient, don't you think? To be honest, I hadn't thought about it, the woman replied with a shrug. She was beginning to realize that a business meeting was out of the question. That was all she needed. Parker said emphatically, even in our backwater, culture is not a bad thing. Can't hurt. Sophia nodded. What do I mean? He rejoiced. And then, when I make an appointment with a beautiful woman, no matter what the occasion, I always prepare for it properly. So what did you want to discuss with me? She took the bull by the horns. She didn't like this business meeting. What if, God forbid, someone found out about it? A lot of things. Sophia replied nonchalantly to the head of the Citizens Affairs Department. For example, about how to raise the standard of living in the neighborhood. And you want to discuss it with me personally, she grinned. Why not? and Parker steered the gas. You live in cubicles, and therefore you know the problems of the village firsthand, don't you? Well, that's just it. Champagne, pouring. And what am I really boring, Sophia thought. After all, a new position is not only new responsibilities, but also new opportunities. There is an opportunity to drink champagne and talk about life with one of the department heads, so I'll make the most of it. How long can I sit in my village and not see the light of day? And if anyone sniffs, I have nothing to be ashamed of. If I don't allow it, it won't happen. I'm not a young secretary. That's the spirit. Approved Parker and poured champagne into glasses. Well, very tasty. With a smile, said a colleague. A nice drink. I love it. I love it too, he nodded. You eat salads. Cake all in the restaurant ordered. Fresh, delicious. Surprisingly, but now the solid head of the department seemed Sophia so simple and homely. Probably that's how his family and friends knew him. It occurred to her, I wonder why he got divorced. And then she was ashamed of her thoughts. Why pry into someone else's life? Shall we do it again? Parker smiled, and not immediately heard Sophia, immersed in his own thoughts. I suggest we do it again. Is it just me, or are you tense? Everything is fine, assured the guest. I will gladly drink more champagne. Sophia, won't you be offended if the second toast is for you? The owner of the office asked not only jokingly, but also seriously. Why should it offend me? She was surprised. I don't know. Well, Thomas, champagne is good, of course. But let's get to why you invited me here. Sophia said in a businesslike tone. Our neighborhood, as you quite rightly pointed out, needs improvement. And when it comes to this particular booth, I have some thoughts. Parker grunted in surprise, but the guest smiled dazzlingly as if she hadn't noticed. We'll discuss it. The dinner was conducted in a strictly businesslike manner. Sophia realized that this was not what Parker was expecting, but there was nothing she could do to please him. He did not hint at a closer acquaintance, for he realized that he would receive a strong rebuff, and for a womanizer like Parker, that was simply unacceptable. It's embarrassing and humiliating. No, it's a gradual thing. Usually a couple of bottles of champagne was enough. I must say, the conversations about improving the standard of living in the neighborhood went well. Thomas listened to Sophia's proposal, and an hour later she called the driver. So soon. Parker stretched out disappointedly. But I guess that's the end of the matter. Corver waved her hands. He wanted to add that he had ordered a sauna, but he stopped talking. I wanted to say that you are absolutely right, smiled charmingly at the person in charge of working with citizens. I will certainly take into account all your wishes and, as they say, let's get to work. When the driver pulled up, Parker escorted Sophia to the car like a true gentleman. He wanted to kiss her hand, but came to his senses in time. Why gossip? It was one thing to spend time with a young and free employee like him, and quite another to spend time with a family woman, the deputy head of the administration. Parker gallantly opened Sophia's doors as the car moved off, admiringly thought this woman. Parker went up to his office, poured champagne, and thought deeply. The head of the department clearly understood this woman. He had a great hookup with his second wife, the same one who had a great career. Thomas had divorced 3 years ago and was no longer eager to remarry. Why should he? He never saw a woman as a free cleaning lady or a cook. But from time to time, he thought there was no need to marry. Parker was clean and, as far as time allowed, did not neglect cleaning. In addition, he was a good cook and knew a dozen interesting recipes for those who do not have time. And lately, Thomas was often ordering food from a restaurant. That's funny. What about the automatic washing machine? For what? Well, as for natural male needs, women who are ready for anything have not yet outlived someone, and serious status did not stop someone, not to mention young secretaries. Those, however, had their own interest in advancing their careers. But here Parker had an iron principle: he never made patronage to any of his own for chills. Have you tried studying? Lovely ladies. Parker had a daughter growing up from his second marriage. If he suddenly found out that Mila was trying to make a career through bed, she would be in trouble. He'd known Sophia Corver for a long time, but he'd hardly ever crossed paths with her. They used to say hello in the corridor of the district administration. Sophia was a good-looking woman back then. But he had plenty of that goodness, and he had plenty of that goodness. Thomas Parker knew perfectly well that he was considered a womanizer and did not deny it. But the people around him were wrong about something. Parker did not chase every skirt. Some quite pretty women didn't stand a chance. He didn't like or recognize vulgar and mercantile individuals at first sight. Young duck secrets didn't count. After all, youth and freshness are beyond competition. When Sophia was appointed deputy chairman of the village council, he considered it the right decision. Corver was not only an attractive woman, but also a conscientious worker and undoubtedly deserved the promotion. And after socializing with Corver, he appreciated her in every way. Suddenly, Parker thought that with such a woman I would like to live the rest of my life. And was surprised to think, what about his love of order? A culinary talent, a car, a machine, and a bunch of ladies for lovemaking. It's an interesting question, of course. The head of the Citizens Department suddenly laughed, to think he had been discovered, but not quite discovered. But for the first time in his life, a meeting with a woman had not gone according to the Parker scenario. And yet, despite this unfortunate circumstance, the mood was great. He'd enjoyed himself, and that was worth a lot. And as for the rest, well, as they say, there's bad luck for old men. And then Thomas Parker is not used to giving up without a fight. The more difficult the task, the more interesting it is. The head of the department drank champagne and ate cake. And looking at his watch, he called the driver. "Would you be so kind as to sign this?" He said, "The traffic will start soon, and I'm tired as a dog." "Okay, Thomas. And your application is accepted and will be considered within 3 working days," said Sophia to another visitor. "Goodbye, goodbye," replied pensioner Frank. Sophia's head had been spinning all day since that private business meeting at the district administration a week had passed. Memories of it made Sophia smile. The man had spent on the road, champagne and hors d'oeuvres from the restaurant. And she, she was proud. What's pride got to do with it? She and Parker were in a purely working relationship, and she didn't think of anything else. And if that was the case, she should have made it clear to him right away. Sophia was sure that in a few days the head of the Citizens Affairs Department would forget about her. And he should have. "Sophia, the specialist Jenna told you this," and brought a small, pretty basket of blood roses into her office. "Thank you, Jenna," she nodded. Sophia already knew who the flowers were from. She felt uneasy. She had no idea how to react, and that made her feel uncomfortable. But at least I can call and say thank you, Sophia thought. "Glad you liked it," Parker replied, and there was a smile in his voice. There was an awkward silence. Sophia broke the silence. "Yes. And it would not be impertinent of me to invite you to dinner at the restaurant." "Thomas, I don't think it's necessary," Sophia replied firmly. "But why don't you really understand?" "I confess I don't. I'm a married woman. I'm in a position of authority and everything. And you, Thomas, have a tarnished reputation." He smirked. "In other words, a reputation as a womanizer." "Right. But I didn't say that," Sophia grinned back. "You don't have to say anything." "Sophia, it's just dinner." Parker didn't give up. She asked ironically. Of course, Thomas didn't hesitate. How could it not be? Suddenly, Sophia realized that she wanted to go to a restaurant. It seemed to her that she had recently fulfilled the norm of her former working life. So why not have a little celebration? I think I'd agree," Sophia said. True, Parker sounded genuinely happy. She thought again that the head of the Citizens Affairs Department, whom the neighborhood knows, and the one who was talking to her at that moment were 2 different people. "Yes," Sophia replied discreetly. Wonderfully received, Parker. Businesslike tone. "My driver will pick you up for bed at 5, she asked fearfully. "Yeah, what's the big deal? What time do I get home?" "Oh, Sophia," the colleague laughed. "You probably haven't heard anything yet. He has irregular working days, which is a common thing in your position. A working moment. Yes, only there's something else." "There's nothing." Sophia wanted to say that she didn't have the right dress, but thought it was unnecessary. In Sophia's opinion, a man shouldn't know about such things. She walked over to the large full-length mirror hanging in the study. What exactly is wrong with the suit? She thought. A dark blue pantsuit, intricate trim on the lapel and cuffs of the jacket. It looked very impressive. I wish I had a little more makeup and jewelry. You can do without it. The gold trim looks pretty flashy. And I think there was an elegant and wide-brimmed hat in the closet. Sophia bought it recently, but never brought it home. But here it is ready to cheer up the evening ensemble, she thought. There is only one thing left to settle Nick. I will be late tonight, Sophia told her husband. Suddenly she felt like a schoolgirl. And what are these trips? Cindy, the accountant, looked out of the window. But what's not to be clear about? Snickered Jenna, escaping to the tea party hat flowers. A driver at the end of the day. And you think about it. Really? The elderly accountant gasped. And I thought she was decent. She has such a good husband. A daughter. Well, give a man a diplomat, and he'll show his true colors. And everyone knows what goes on upstairs. They're all related, for God's sake, the specialist ranted. But our doggies got it. That's right, the accountant nodded. Well, and then the sight of the little one, it seems, did not go in vain. After all, she's always oppressed Nick. Here is the result. Yes, Cindy sighed. And what a nice family they were, weren't they? Every dog in the stalls knew about the relationship between the math teacher and his mother-in-law. Moreover, it was one of the most discussed topics in the store, in the nurses' station, and of course, in the village administration. Well, now Sophia's colleagues had something to discuss. And in the light of recent events, it looked a little spicy. Cindy, please. Jenna rolled her eyes. Why worry about them? Nick, if anything, who will be there to comfort them. Everyone knows the vice principal's got a crush on him. Molly's a very attractive woman, by the way. Not like our duck. Yeah, it's like Santa Barbara all over again. The women laughed merrily and continued to grind the bones of the deputy head and the rest of the villagers. Sophia, I'm speechless. Parker exclaimed. I didn't mince words. Are you charming? Thank you, she smiled. What's the harm in that? It was a pleasure. But at the same time, a strange uneasiness settled in her soul. Maybe it was a premonition. What will you have to drink? Thomas asked. At your discretion? To be honest, I don't know much about wine. Then I'd recommend a Spanish wine, very bright, very tasty. Well then, let's have the Spanish wine. Sophia nodded. They drank the wine, which indeed turned out to be amazingly tasty. Ate shish kebab of sturgeon with spicy sweet sauce, and talked about everything in the world. Parker proved to be an interesting conversationalist, and the time flew by in a flash. My God, it was already 9:30. Sophia gasped, looking at her watch. They'll be worried at home. Thomas nodded understandingly. Well, of course, she replied and went to her purse for her phone. Where the hell did it go? Sophia cheerfully turned to her colleague. Wait a minute. Sophia waved Sophia away with annoyance, intending to dump the contents of her purse on the table. Sophia mockingly held out Parker. I apologize profusely for interrupting what appears to be a fascinating pastime, but maybe you're looking for this. He pointed with a smile to Sophia's cell phone lying on the table. And both of them, without conspiring, spluttered. Cheerfully, she said, Husband, you have not lost me. Well, great, I'll be there soon. Love you. Parker felt a prick of jealousy and sadly stated, well, I guess the banquet is over. Sophia waved her hands. It can't be helped. They're waiting for me at home. Well, if they are, when she entered the house, her husband was awake. Have you been drinking? Nick asked, looking at her intently. I had a drink, Sophia nodded. There was a small banquet after the administration meeting. Something was wrong. Was it Nick's imagination, or was there a challenge in his wife's last sentence? Why not? He shrugged. You're entitled. You weren't brought here under the arm. Yeah, the wife muttered. I'm sorry. I'm tired. Let's go to bed. The New Year's Eve corporate party for employees of the administration was prepared on a grand scale. A newly opened restaurant was engaged for this purpose. The conversations of the administration staff were all on the same topic. Ladies' outfits I have already looked through long, revealing with a cut to the thigh. But you're not wearing that kind of fire, not at my size. Oh, come on. It's not a problem. Put on a high-waisted dress and you'll be happy. You'll look slimmer and prettier, and you'll show off your legs. I want to wear red, but I don't know if it's appropriate. Girls, whose year is this? Secretaries, accountants, specialists, and higher-ranking employees resembled schoolgirls on the eve of a party. And it was a very pretty sight. Sophia, like her coworkers, was also racking her brains over what kind of outfit to buy to make everyone aha. Come on, mentally under the case, but on herself, so everyone. After that dinner at the restaurant, Sophia felt something had changed. She didn't know what it was yet, but it was obvious. And then there was that stare from Nick. Did he suspect something? There was nothing to suspect. She and Parker never saw each other again, since they were both busy with work on New Year's Eve. And yet, on Sunday, Sophia went into town to pick up her mom's dress. Well, that's so last century, Helen remarked. When the mother voiced her plans, that is, did not understand Sophia. So now everyone orders in online stores, right? Explained the girl. Yes, but what about trying it on? So it can be done at the point of delivery. Maybe, Sophia grinned. But I'm used to the old-fashioned way. You should. I will keep up with the times, she smiled and went outside. The weather was fantastic. It was warm and the snow was falling quietly. I wish we had this kind of weather at Christmas, Sophia thought dreamily and frowned. Most of the time the holidays were a challenge to her psyche. As usual, her mom would show up and start bad-mouthing Nick. What the hell? Rarely, very rarely without that cataclysm. Sophia suddenly pictured Parker in Nick's place and wondered, I wonder what kind of relationship they'd have with Mom. And the woman sighed heavily. She'd been thinking about him a lot lately. What was that about? Sophia reached the bus stop and said hello to her fellow villagers. The retired headmistress said hello and looked at her strangely. Some of the people standing at the bus stop followed her example, and Sophia felt naked. What are they looking at? 5 minutes later, Sophia's bus pulled up. Please come in, Will said kindly. A student visiting his parents for the weekend. Thank you, Will. She smiled gratefully at the guy and suddenly heard someone murmur. Tell me, please, what honors? Sophia could have been mistaken, of course, but the voice seemed to belong to Anna, Betty's friend. She had sat with Anna more than once at the same table with relatives. Sophia had always thought that Betty's friend was quite nice to her. So what's the matter? There were those looks too. Sophia took her seat and decided to keep her head down. It was no secret to her that her appointment to a new position was received ambiguously by the people. Many were genuinely happy for Sophia, noting that but she deserved the promotion. But not without detractors. God only knows what they argued their discontent. But the fact remained that there were such people. But was it worth paying attention to them? You can't please everyone philosophically, Sophia summed up. For shopping, she chose a hypermarket 2 stops away from the bus station. The market was definitely not suitable for this purpose. Sophia walked through the boutiques. Her eyes were dazzled by the variety of colors and styles. The woman stopped at a marvelously beautiful evening dress, a relay of color and rice. It would go perfectly with her dark Russian hair and gray eyes. The dress cost more than half her paycheck, but it was so beautiful. And if you pictured it with newly bought shoes, clutch sharpening, and beautiful makeup, it was fire. To take it or not to take it? That was the question. Mentally paraphrased Sophia of the famous writer Sophia. She heard a painfully familiar voice, and that was the meeting. In front of her stood none other than Parker. Hello, confused woman said. What are you doing here? Having fun? Thomas asked. I'm just picking out a dress for corporate events. A necessary thing, he approved. How's that going? I haven't picked anything out yet, Sophia admitted. Why not? It's just something. I think this purple one is really nice, Parker said in a businesslike tone, and looking at the dress she was looking at. I think Sophia thought dejectedly too. But for the money it costs, you could live on it for almost a month. You know what? Why don't I give you this dress? Thomas suggested as if he were buying a candy bar. What did the coworker fearfully ask? No, that's out of the question. But I can see you like it. You don't, he said. Do you like it? Nodded Sophia. But it's very expensive. No, Thomas, I can't accept such a gift, she said firmly. No more than money. Parker wouldn't give up. Well, I can't take no for an answer. I need a hint. As if out of nowhere, a young salesgirl materialized. No. Sophia shook her head, stuttering with excitement. But her unexpected companion unhesitatingly declared and to tell, and to show, and it would be good to help to decide on the accompanying goods. Well, there are handbag shoes. In general, you know yourself. And now the lady wants to try on this dress. The sales consultant looked questioningly at Sophia, and she nodded. She was already convinced that Parker knew how to insist. So was it really worth it? Grabbing her dress, Sophia left, for example. And when the colleague came out, he was speechless. Sophia, I'm blown away, Parker said. Is it really so terrible? She smiled. It's not. Just awful. Terrible, beautiful. No, it's a stunning dress. It really looks like it's made on you, the saleswoman said with a smile. I want to offer you these shoes. The girl took out of the box silk, lilac, pink shoes, decorated with bows with decorations. We'll take them from you too. Without giving Sophia a second thought, Thomas said, and you need a treasure too. So Sophia became the happy owner of dress shoes and elegant treasure. Reshed his fancy shimmer and crystals. Parker pulled out his credit card, and despite Sophia's protests, Sophia paid up. So uncomfortable, she slipped in pitifully. Uncomfortable, Thomas interjected. He looked at her strangely. Yeah, and if I offered to take you home in my car, that would be awkward too. And you want to suggest it, said Sophia in a thin voice, and not just suggest it. Parker nodded and added, I'll insist. And not just suggest it. Parker nodded and added, I will insist. Then you better say yes right away, she grinned, determined to pay him back for all this splendor at the first opportunity. Right. The colleagues left the hypermarket, not realizing that she was watching them. Cinderella's friend, Sophia. Here is my carriage, Thomas said proudly, opening the door. Parker drove a dark cherry-colored Ford. The car looked brand new. He added, as if reading Sophia's mind, It's beautiful. I like it too, Parker nodded and sighed, asking Sophia, Don't you think something is happening to us? Actually, she didn't think there was anything going on with them. But Sophia was more worried about something else. What to do about it? I don't know, she said quietly. Not true, Parker whispered. Leaning toward Sophia, he gently took the woman's chin and looked into her eyes as if asking her something. Sophia covered her eyes for a moment, as if answering him yes, and in just a second, they broke. Oh, like schoolboys, Parker laughed a few minutes later, and Sophia was in complete agreement with him. Now she felt like a schoolgirl who had kissed for the first time in her life, and now she was afraid that her mom would find out and scold her. Except that it was not only about mom, but also about her husband and daughter. It was about them first of all, though it's unlikely the mom is either. Wendy, despite the contrast with Nick, would approve of her daughter's behavior. And so it was when Parker brought Sophia home. Her husband wasn't with her daughter. That was good for her. It was embarrassing to face them. And the next day, it seemed that everyone in the village knew that Sophia Corver had come home with some guy in a car. She was sitting in her office drinking coffee when her mother called. What the hell are you doing? Going off the deep end? Wendy's on a roll. So Sophia thought doomfully. I think it's starting. If until yesterday she had nothing to hide, now the situation had changed. It's not proper for a married woman to make out in a car with her face. However, it's all yours too. Good morning, Mom, Sophia said calmly. And you are sure that it is good, gargled, and the mother of the whole village only says that you were brought yesterday by car. Well, what's criminal about it? She asked in a friendly manner. What's criminal about it? Yelled Wendy. So the daughter took the phone away from her ear to ride in a car with someone else's man. That sounds normal to you? Mom slowed down and said, Sophia, riding around with another man's man. Maybe it's not normal. Only I did not ride, and came home with a colleague whom I met in the city and who bought you a dress and shoes." Mother interrupted me. "Aren't you ashamed to accept gifts from a man? It makes things more complicated." "It's a loan," she said. The first thing that came to mind, a loan. The old woman asked incredulously. "Yeah, I haven't heard anything about a paycheck yet. And we have a corporate party in 3 days." Sophia lied inspirationally. "We're going to a new restaurant. We're going out with the district administration. So you have to be on your best behavior." "What did I tell you? Your husband doesn't know how to make money. Do you need to be on top of your game right now? And not just at the New Year's Eve party. Why don't you come to the party? It would have been a dime a dozen. Mom, what's the point of this?" She sighed tiredly. "You know what time he comes?" "Oh, it's been a long time." With annoyance, said Wendy. "I wish you well. Do you? What's in it for me? What do you want?" "I want you to get your husband up to look for a part-time job, or better yet, another job." Sophia laughed, glad that the conversation had moved on to a less sensitive topic. "And where is she in the village?" "That's another job. If only to become a laborer." "You could start your own business," he grumbled. "After all, he's a mathematician. Just knowing math isn't enough. You need an entrepreneurial spirit. And I don't have one." She summed it up triumphantly. What did she have to prove? "You got a worthless man." "Mom, let's figure out our family life on our own sometime." "For probably the 1,000th time," Sophia said. "And anyway, I have to work. So bye." And in the evening, she had a talk with her husband. "Sophia, while Helen is out walking, we need to talk." He didn't waste time with the preface. "Well, we need to, then we need to." "I agree," Sophia nodded, realizing what the conversation would be about. Nick had been ready for a serious conversation since morning, and now he didn't know how to start. Not sure where to start. She assumed, "And I'll get you a paper. You heard that idiotic rumor that I got a ride home from some guy in a foreign car. And now you want to hold me accountable." "Why would you want to hold me accountable?" Peacefully hummed husband. "I just want to understand the situation and understand. We're still a family. Sophia, I've always been honest with you, so I think I can expect the same." "Yes, of course," Sophia nodded. "But I have nothing to repent of. I always thought you were above gossip. I was wrong. And I can't have this conversation," Nick said thoughtfully. And his wife thought that he was probably right. "What's the point of talking about it?" "Nick, there's nothing to talk about," she exclaimed. "He had a ride. I don't deny it. But it wasn't some guy, it was a colleague, the head of the Citizens Affairs Department. I met him by chance at the hypermarket. And he drove me home. That's it. So he went to the village on purpose to take you home." Nick squinted incredulously. "And before that he bought himself an expensive dress and something to go with it." The situation is more serious than Sophia realized. I wonder how much she'll find out later. What if Nick got wind of that kiss in the car? Desperate, she thought to Dawn. The windows were tinted, and the car was far from the parking lot, but still. And who the hell was following me? Sophia ordered herself to be calm. If anyone knew about that kiss, her mother would have mentioned it. Wendy's daughter had kept silent about it. Anyway, calm is only calm. "Oh, you know so much," Sophia shook her head. "But since you have an informant, he should have reported to you that my mysterious admirer bought me this dress on credit." "On credit?" "Yeah, why are you surprised?" "Well, what if you hadn't met him?" "Nick, you should be an interrogator," grinned the wife. "If I hadn't met him, I would have bought a cheaper dress or called someone. There'd be more questions." "Sorry, crushed," muttered Nick. Sophia walked over to her husband and stroked his hair. With a smile, she said, "Let's just forget about it. And let it be the worst thing that happened to us." "I agree," he smiled back and intercepted his wife's hand and kissed it. "I see you have peace, friendship, love," cheerfully said the daughter who came in. "Did you expect us to fight here?" Her mother asked with a grin. "No," Helen shook her head. "It's just nice to see once again that the parents are doing well." The girl undressed and went to her room. "I heard what she said," Sophia said quietly, "so we'll try to fit in." With tenderness, said her husband. Sophia tried her best to fit in and seemed to succeed. She ignored the general message for the entire 3 days, remaining before the corporate party at the restaurant. Parker, the trips to the district administration with Sophia was entrusted to Jenna, arguing that she was busy, which, however, was true. She answered his calls dryly and one syllable, letting him know that they could only have a business relationship and nothing more. And after the new year, the head will come out of vacation, and everything will be back to normal. Good, Sophia thought with relief. It didn't cost me anything. That's just it. The restaurant, where the corporate party was held, had been opened recently, so it looked untouched and somehow uninhabited. Perhaps it was the high-tech style of the place. Sophia suddenly felt like a snow queen in her ice kingdom. Not to give away, only she guessed that the gossip about her and Parker came from the native village council. And now the co-workers were clearly eager for it to continue. Sophia decided she would not give them that pleasure. She kept talking about her work, had fun, danced, enjoyed delicious food and drinks, and did not give away her desire to approach Parker, and ideally to torture herself with him, and repeat that kiss again and again. "May I invite you gallantly," gave her his hand. Michael, the head of the agriculture department, and Sophia nodded with a smile. Tonight was going to be fun, and Sophia was having fun. She settled into her seat and found herself a cold soda. And 5 minutes later, a security officer came up to her and asked her to dance as well. "Our Sophia is a real hot commodity," commented Cindy, the accountant. "And Parker is not without tears." Her assistant Nina chuckled. The head of the Citizens Affairs Department poured one drink after another, and from time to time cast hateful glances at Sophia. And when the security officer, as befitted a true gentleman, escorted the lady to her seat at the table, Parker approached her with a firm step. The audience froze in anticipation of a dance performance. With forbidding language, he suggested Sophia. "Thomas, are you sure?" She said with a polite smile. "Maybe you should sit down. I decide what's best for me." Parker said, "But we're on a first-name basis." "No," Sophia blurted out, and the almost inferior crowd perked their ears at you. "Thomas, what are you doing?" Michael tried to defuse the situation. It's okay. Who doesn't? A man's had a little too much to drink. It's just an everyday thing. Let's call a cab. But who has a cell phone nearby? An administration employee from a neighboring village readily took out a phone from her purse and started dialing the number of the cab service, and Michael felt it necessary to warn. And without any stupid woman's gossip, I'll rip my tongue out myself. To say the audience was disappointed was to say nothing. The cab arrived 5 minutes later. Parker was escorted to the car and the fun continued. Sophia could physically feel the stares of her colleagues, and after a while she hurriedly turned away, citing a headache. The next day, Parker sent Sophia a message apologizing for her behavior. Apology accepted. Happy New Year. Was it written? Christmas was spent alone with Nick. Wendy went to a sanatorium on a voucher for pensioners, and Helen, having met Christmas and scared in a salad, went to celebrate the holiday in the company of classmates. "You know," said Nick, "I've wanted to celebrate Christmas with you for a long time. But there's always someone else around." Sophia said cheerfully, "Or someone will show up." That New Year's Eve, the Corver couple felt young and hopeful for the first time in a long time. They chatted merrily and had a delicious meal. Ice-cold champagne they recalled carefree youth, the time of the courtship, the wedding, the news of the long-awaited addition to the family, the birth. Niece? Yeah, it was great. Sophia smiled as she sipped her champagne. "Do you remember how you gave me cosmetics and golden balls?" "You bet I do." Her husband laughed. "It was you from Grandma's paratrooper." "Oh, and hit me then." And the old lady, by the way, had a heavy hand. That night, nobody came to see them. Sophia guessed why. But she didn't care about that now. Let them watch their families. Sophia thought, falling asleep in Nick's arms. "I have the coolest husband in the world, and we have a wonderful daughter. The New Year's holidays are relaxing after all." Sophia tried to concentrate on her work, but it was not going well. The same thing seemed to be happening with the other employees. She went to Paulina's office and, with annoyance, noting that she was not there, went to the accounting department. And so it was. together with Irina and Veronica again. They're washing someone's bones, Jenna. I asked you to prepare the certificates this morning, said Sophia. Where are they? I'm leaving in 10 minutes. Are you? Are you going to sign for me? Jenna reluctantly got up and went to her office. And the deputy manager saw the car and laughed. I'll be there soon. When Sophia entered the agriculture department, she ran into Parker there. Oh, Sophia, in my honor, he smiled. How are you? How was the holidays? Thank you. All good. Choppy, Sophia replied. Excuse me. I have to go. Yeah, sure, we'll talk again. Thomas sounded a little too meaningful. She soon realized what the tone meant. The agricultural department in Sofia informed her that she was to be sent to the regional center. For how long? She asked. For 24 hours, answered the head of the department. You will get your daily allowance in the accounting department and come straight to me. Okay, Sophia nodded and left the office. I guess you already know. Thomas entered the office with a smile. What do you mean? And business trips, of course, he shrugged. When Sophia returned to the agricultural department, she learned that she was traveling with Parker. She was terribly tempted to refuse. But under what sauce would she do it? And then, if she refused, it would give the department head some interesting ideas. And Sophia wouldn't want that. She's had enough of the New Year's Eve party. Surely the cuckoos, despite the warnings, were already scratching their tongues. Sophia went on a business trip with Parker. This trip was the beginning of their passionate affair. Both realized there was no point in hiding your feelings under lock and key. And be honest, was this trip in your prayers? Sophia asked, snuggling into his shoulder. But what was I supposed to do? Thomas sighed, pretending to sigh. You were avoiding me. And then there was that stupid corporate party. Drunk like an idiot. Wanted a bloody. What's going to happen now? She said thoughtfully. And everything depends on us. I want to be with you if you become my wife. Then the gossips won't dare say a word. Well, that's true. But Nick? What about Nick? Isn't Nick a little boy who'll get over it? He's not old yet. He'll find someone else. You just shook your head. Sophia. Oh, sweetheart. I've been divorced twice. And as a person with experience, I can say that there's really nothing terrible about it. It's more of a people thing. To me, it's really simple. If the marriage has come to an end, there is no point in saving it, and it is better to try to become happy again. And if there's someone you want to be with, then God knows what to do. You're probably right, she agreed. But you see, I don't have that experience, and it's really hard and uncomfortable for me. I understand, with sympathy, Parker said. Helen is graduating from high school this year, Sophia continued. She's looking forward to graduation and having her mom and dad present together. They are together, being divorced. No, Jen, I'm not ready to make that decision yet. You don't have to, he smiled. Just to be near. And there, as they say, there will be a day, there will be food. Thank you for what? For understanding. Believe me, it's not easy for me, Thomas sighed. But I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. A year passed. On Helen's birthday, all the relatives gathered at the Corver house. If Betty held a grudge against her brother, she prudently kept it to herself. She had come to congratulate her niece, and everything else was none of her business except the relatives and closest family friends. The party was attended by half of her classmates, the celebrant, and 2 friends from the university she had safely entered. Nick and Sophia were only too happy to welcome their daughter's new friends into their hospitable home. From the outside, everything looked the same as before, but only externally. Sophia, I was still seeing Thomas. And every day he got more and more insistent that she should divorce Nick and live with him one day. Parker said, I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of this conspiracy. What could she say? Sophia was even worse for leading a double life for a year. What kind of nerves do you have to have? Except that sometimes it seemed to Eugenia that it was easier and easier for her. Sophia exclaimed in amazement when the lover voiced it. Do you think I should lie to the man I love in my own way? Yes, I do. At least as the father of my daughter, it's easier. You think so highly of me. That's when they had their first fight. Thomas apologized for a long time. Her heart shook. Then followed a rather long conversation, during which Sophia decided to tell her husband about the divorce when Lenk turned 18. And so that day came, and Sophia realized with annoyance that she couldn't decide to tell Nick about the divorce. "Sophia, but no one pulled you by the tongue," Parker pointed out. "Did you make this decision on your own? I don't want to pressure you in any way. But if you don't do what you said you'd do, I'll start thinking that you don't know how to keep your word." "You're right," she said, "but I need a little time." "How much time is a little time?" Thomas squinted. "Zen, but we're not in a market." All right. He held up his hands as if in surrender. "All right, I'll wait a little longer. I don't know what you're waiting for," Kate, who worked in the registry office, said perplexed. The women had become friends over the year, and Kate was the only person who knew the details of their relationship. She was Thomas's childhood friend, by the way. Sophia was jealous at first, but then she realized there was nothing to fear. If Kate and Thomas didn't have an affair when they were young or even when they were older, it was unlikely to happen at all. "What are you waiting for?" She repeated. "You love him. He loves you. So what's the problem? Thousands of couples marry and divorce. So you're not the first, you're not the last." "Nick, that's a shame." "What about Helen?" Sophia shook her head at her friend. "Do you feel sorry for everyone? But the farther into the forest, the more wood. If you want to know, I've never seen Thomas like that. For him, relationships with women have always been a kind of sporting competition. Really, every woman was like a victory for him. And with you, everything changed and Sophia made up her mind. "Nick, we need to talk," she said. Her heart was beating like crazy, but there was nowhere to retreat to. At that moment, Nick was feeling the same thing. All this time, he was subconsciously waiting for this conversation. After all, he didn't live on Mars. However, deep down, Nick hoped that it was just an affair. Sonia will outweigh it, and everything will be the same. Turns out, no. "Nick, I'm not gonna beat around the bush." "Yeah, around. I'm leaving." Sophia suddenly felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. Wow, turns out this isn't scary at all. What was I expecting? I can't say I'm happy. But now that you've made up your mind. "Nick, you're a wonderful you." "Oh, don't do that," he wrinkled his nose. "As they say, here's God. And here's the threshold, and there's nothing more to talk about. I'm going tomorrow." Not believing her happiness, said Sophia. "As you wish." The next day, she moved into town to Parker's house. Come in, he fussed. "We're going to celebrate." "I'm not divorced yet." Sophia laughed. "But it's only a matter of time." Thomas's apartment was spacious and bright, and looked nothing like a bachelor pad. Everything has been meticulously cleaned, interior cut. The work of a top-notch designer. "Please," the host pointed toward the hall, where Sophia was waiting for a sumptuously set table. In the very center stood a goose with apples. And there was an Olivier salad, a salad of shrimp, avocado, and egg bindings with a creamy seafood assortment sauce. Miniature chocolate cakes with whipped cream. "What restaurant did you order from?" Sophia asked. "What restaurant?" "Pretend." Thomas was indignant. "With the exception of the cakes, I made everything myself. My favorite woman moved in. Good girl." She smiled and kissed him on the cheek. "So what are we waiting for?" "I'm hungry like a wolf." "What will you have?" "Wine, cognac, champagne. "Well, I'll have a whiskey," said Parker, and the lovers began their meal. "How delicious," Sophia said with admiration, tasting the sleeve salad. "It's from Italian cuisine. I like it very much too. Do you know what my dream is?" Asked Thomas after the second toast, which was to love. "And what's that?" "To meet your daughter." Sophia's soul was singing. Today she called Helen and informed her of the impending divorce. To her great relief, her daughter was very understanding. "I'll introduce you," Sophia promised. For the second time in the last 24 hours, she was surprised at how simple everything was. But unfortunately, it wasn't. After the divorce, Nick became addicted to alcohol. At first, he'd have a drink or two after work. But as time went on, things took a serious turn. One day, Nick showed up at school with a bad hangover, for which he was sharply reprimanded by the principal. The mathematician apologized and said it wouldn't happen again. Kelly, he's not really drunk. The vice principal stood up for him. At least the man had some drama in his personal life. Who doesn't? The principal grinned. Even for students was not a secret that Molly has long been unevenly breathing to the math teacher. And here was such an opportunity to win the man of her dreams. And to say the vice principal had been a widow for 6 years. All right, Kelly relented. On your, Molly, responsibility. But if this happens again, I'm gonna have to talk to you differently, Nick. I hope you understand what I mean. I do, replied the mathematician briefly. Well and good. Let's get on with our work. The incident never happened again. And a couple of months later, after a corporate birthday party, they decided to continue the banquet at Nick's. The cell phone was ringing off the hook, and Alex, the gym teacher, exclaimed in anger, "Yours, that's the one." With annoyance nodded Alex. So calmed down. To hell with her. Alex, you're 100% wrong, said Nick. Do you know what this is called? What do we have? We don't keep it when we lose it. Oh, poor or what? Colleagues drank a shot each, and the gym teacher remarked, but freedom. Fuck that freedom. Nick said with tears in his voice. When I see Sofiaka coming to work with his whip, I'm ready to kill him. And why him? Alex grinned. There, I think your mother-in-law did her best. And ours was talking to the whole village about how worthless he was. But apparently her words fell on fertile ground. The coworker left, and Nick continued his outpourings in proud solitude. Alex's words about his mother-in-law's contribution to the divorce did not go out of his head, and he went to his ex-mother-in-law's house drunk and made a scandal. It's all your fault, you old witch, he yelled, flashing his eyes. Why? Wendy said nonchalantly. 3, you always said I was worthless. That said, confirmed the older woman. Wasn't she? And Nick couldn't keep a woman. So it's the mother-in-law's fault. Well done. I'm you old witch, threateningly said the former son-in-law and approached Wendy. Help, they're killing me. She paid with a voice not her own and ran out of the house. Nick, what are you doing? Shouted Betty, who came over. The neighbor told her that a drunken Nick had gone to his ex-mother-in-law's house. And the woman followed, just as long as he didn't do anything. I'll get her now, yelled the math teacher. I'll go to the district police officer. The old woman continued to yell, and such a person teaches children at school. Ah, disgusting. Fucking alcoholic. You can be sure I won't let it go. Wendy, honey, I'm so sorry, for God's sake. Betty begged her tearfully. You understand. I'll get on my knees to you, but don't go to the police station. To hell with you. The old woman came in with her and, cautiously squinting at her brother-in-law, went into the house, and Betty took her brother home, exhorting him that life doesn't end after divorce. I love her, Nick interjected to his sister. You know I love her. Betty just sighed heavily and thought, and they say women are stupid. A few days later, the story reached the education department, and the question of firing the mathematician arose. Colleagues were divided into those who argued that such behavior is completely unacceptable for a teacher and those who supported Nick. By the way, Sophia, feeling guilty before the former spouse, stood up in his defense. She tried by all means to persuade the education officer not to use such drastic measures. But alas, as a result, Nick was left without a job. He'll be lost, Sophia lamented. Don't exaggerate, replied Thomas. After all, he is a grown man, an intellectual. I think he will pull himself together in time. Oh, I don't know. I sighed. You know what she was thinking. Just promise me you won't take it personally. I get scared when you talk like that, Parker admitted. Yes, and it's really not a big deal. Anyway, maybe it makes sense to postpone the wedding. Why would I do that? I don't see any joy in that. Sophia's on. Yeah, I've been living like a hot frying pan. I'm probably the only lazy person who doesn't say behind my back, I've driven a man crazy. And they don't give a rat's ass about me trying to help him. And I still got a job to do, by the way. Well, the job isn't exactly a problem, Thomas said. There's a specialist in the civil registry office about to retire. Why? Will you look for a good option and work? Kate didn't tell me anything about that, she wondered. But you would. When was the last time you saw each other? About a couple weeks ago, Sophia recalled. But you see, the position's only been open for a week. I think we should hold off on the wedding after all. But think about it. Nick is in this situation, and I'm getting married. And you're like salt in the wound. Zen, but after all, we're living together. Well, okay, whatever you say, Harker gave in. In the end, they decided to postpone the wedding for a month. Nick felt empty and cold. His parents had passed away one by one many years ago. The wife he loved and idolized had left him for someone else. The daughter was studying to be a journalist in a regional city, and Nick was clear that Helen would not return to her native village. What with her profession here to do? With a sigh, he thought, except to visit. And now he didn't have a job either. Nick called his daughter almost every day, and Helen supported her father as best she could. She said that the divorce was not the end of life, and that Nick would still find happiness. In general, everything they usually say in such cases. If you want to come to my place, the daughter said. I'm working part-time now and renting an apartment. No, really, the only other person who supported him in any way was his sister Betty. You should come more often, she said. Why do you have to sit alone? Nick nodded uncertainly. What? Yeah, shouted the sister. Have you eaten at all today? I don't remember. He doesn't remember. But he remembered to get a bottle. Nick, but what are you turning into? The woman said in despair. Listen, why don't you stay with us? You'll come to your senses, and then we'll see what to do with you. Maybe we can find you a job. And Nick, Betty, he said quietly. Leave me alone. I'm sick enough as it is. The sister thought for a moment and walked out with a sigh. She walked home and thought about how easy it was to break something that had taken years to build up. Unlike her friend Anna, Betty was far from judging her former sister-in-law. But how painful it was to see past and washed-up addition Sophia while Nick trivialized. Betty approached the house and saw Anna sitting on a bench. Hi, her friend said with a smile. I'm here to see you. Well, hello, sighed Betty and invited Anna into the house. The women came into the kitchen and the hostess offered them tea. What tea is there? Betty waved it off. There's a lot going on here. And how can it be without special interest? Betty asked. Frankly speaking, she had enough of what was going on in their family. I heard the latest news was righteous anger, exclaimed Anna. Your ex was transferred to the civil registry office. In my opinion, quite logically shrugged the landlady. After all, she lives in the city. And most likely, it is inconvenient for her to go to work in the village. But for me, it's much simpler. She just had a guilty conscience. Her friend declared triumphantly. So what's the matter? Betty grinned. So she has one. And I'll tell you something else. She postponed the wedding because of what happened to the can. But what a noble thing to do, huh? Anna shook her hands. Yes, they are without a stamp in the passport. They have been married for more than a year, and they live together. Not a big sacrifice. Betty suddenly felt incredibly disgusted. It felt like someone had tainted the air in the house. And you know what, Anne? After a little silence, she said, Go away. She was stunned. I don't get it. Are you defending her or something? Well, Betty didn't expect it. I mean, Nick is your brother Nick's brother. Not only am I his sister, but I'm also a woman. And as a woman, I understand Sophia. Maybe it's not love at all. But right now, at this moment, the pig is attracted to this man. Judgment. Who are we? Life will judge us. You go away. Nick kept drinking. Now he was living on the principle that a day had passed and it was all right. That's how it is. The villagers said. What a good family they had, eh? You can't be sure of anything. It seemed that it couldn't get any worse. But the worst was ahead. Nick, a former non-smoker, picked up the habit. And then one day, what Betty had feared would happen. That night, she couldn't sleep. The young woman, as if anticipating trouble, sat on the terrace and sold not cheerful thoughts. And when Betty smelled smoke, she realized with some sixth sense that Nick's house was on fire. She went to the wicket from where the house where her brother lived was clearly visible and made sure that her hunch was correct. Fire. At the top of her voice wailed Betty and skipped to Nick on the move dialing the emergency number. When Betty ran up to her brother's house, the fire was slowly but surely growing. Without thinking, the woman kicked the door open with her foot. She ran into the house, where she got the strength from. She wet a rag and sold into her brother's bedroom and began to shake him. "Wake up, you idiot," screamed Betty. "Is your house on fire?" Sister forcefully pushed Nick and beckoned him toward the exit. The woman realized that every second counted another tug, and they were outside and just in time to fall to the grass. Betty saw the ceiling collapse. Before she lost consciousness, she thought she had made it just in time. People were running from all sides. The house where Nick had been happy for almost 20 years was extinguished quickly. But to restore it required a lot of money, which he didn't have. In fact, it was not even a question of restoration, but almost a full-fledged construction. Nick moved in with his sister. Michael helped them with household chores, planted potatoes, and willingly helped the children to do their homework. The youngest from the bench had a math problem. Nick stopped drinking. The house Betty lived in with her husband and 2 sons wasn't that big. So Nick couldn't help but realize that he had to come up with a place to live. But what could he think of? The village council only shook their hands, for there were no empty houses in the village. One day, Nick heard Michael ask his wife if he was moving at all. If he'd gone on a shift, it would have been good for him. "We're not millionaires." He felt bad about embarrassing his sister and brother-in-law. That's why Nick thought it was a good idea. Except there was no money on the phone to go online. Betty, "I hate to ask you for anything, but could you spare some for a poor hobo?" 300. He asked his sister. Nick had been calling himself a hobo lately, either jokingly or seriously. "What's that for?" With suspicion, Betty asked, "And has your brother been drinking?" "Don't worry, you're past that." Nick assured her with a grin. "I want to look for a job ad." "How long do I have to sit on your neck?" "Well, I'll get it for you." A couple days later, he found an ad for shift workers. "When are you leaving?" Betty asked. "In a week." Nick called his daughter before he left. "I'm happy for you," Helen exclaimed. "I've been having all kinds of bad thoughts lately, but thank God you're okay. I should come visit you sometime. What do you think?" "We'll see," the father replied evasively. Nick was ashamed to admit to his daughter that the house where she spent her childhood was no longer there. The ex-wife apparently didn't know anything about it either. After all, Sophia now worked in the city and did not maintain relations with any of the villagers. Thomas and Sophia were 3 days away from getting married. "I can't wait for you to say yes to me in the face of the law," said the happy groom. The future spouses were having lunch at the very cafe where they had met at the hardware meeting. The faces of the bride and groom were shining and the people around them were smiling. "I look at you and directly infect with good mood," said the former to them Lola, head of the Department of Media Relations. "Are you so cool?" "Thank you for your kind words," smiled Parker. The daughter arrived the evening before the wedding of moms. "You could put your face on the cover," Helen exclaimed, kissing her mother. "You look like $1,000,000. "1 million?" Sophia smiled embarrassedly. "Right. Why am I being petty for $1 million? Oh, come on." With a laugh, she waved her daughter away. "You are not hungry." "I could eat an elephant," cheerfully admitted Helen. "But I can't promise an elephant," Sophia hummed. "But fried chicken, and I'll feed you. Come on," encouraged the girl. Almost a year of studenthood. I gave her a lot of fried chicken, but such a delicious Tina, as my mother, has not yet met. I hope the groom appreciated. By the way, where did he appreciate it? Did he appreciate it at the bachelor party now? Mother smiled. He, like you, was not afraid to let go. What about the cake stripper and other bachelor party trappings? You know, not afraid. I don't think our Thomas Stepanovich can be surprised by strippers anymore, or anything else for that matter. I'm very glad I got him for goulash. What about Daddy's sadness? Helen asked. It always seemed to me that you loved each other so much that there is no stronger. It did not seem. The daughter answered Sophia seriously. That's the way it was. But I guess our love just ran out of steam. It happens like that too. But I am grateful to Vanya that he was in my life. By the way, you called him a long time ago. The other day. How is he? He seems to be doing well. He's away on a shift. Oh well, God forbid he's doing well. There's a very nice woman coming, and we'll drink to that. Winked Sophia, the daughter's bachelorette party. Helen smiled understandingly. Or else. Mother and daughter laughed amicably. And then Kate showed up. The bachelorette party was a success. The next day, Thomas and Sophia became husband and wife. Wendy looked at her daughter under her dress with a concentrated frown. One could only wonder what grievances she would express to her new son-in-law. Nick returned from his shift a month later with a lot of money and a great mood. It would be better to solve the problem with housing. The tramp had arrived. He announced his arrival. Fresher, better looking, Sister said approvingly. The work has done you good. Very much so. I'll have to do something about the house. There'll be daylight. There'll be food. The housing problem solved itself. And not just housing. In the morning, Nick went fishing in the neighboring village. The fish pecked and not bad. And Corver learning to cook, which Betty was a great master. But the stars had prepared something more interesting for Nick. He pulled the rod, but it was obviously caught on something. Shit. Nick cursed and bent his lice and fell into the water. He surfaced. And headed for the shore, pulling the fish boat up behind him. Nick was walking through the village soaking wet and carrying a bag with a still living fish in it. But there was no cell phone in his pocket. Drowned in the river, and Nick, he heard a woman's voice. What are you doing here? Molly? Nick exclaimed in surprise. Unexpected. Yes, I came to go fishing. In fact, in their meeting, by and large, there was nothing unexpected. He knew that the head teacher had a mother living in the village. And yet, how did you manage to get so far away? Molly asked. The boat overturned. With a smile, he answered. And the former colleagues could not help laughing. That's what the amateur fishermen, said coworkers. And went to my place before the bust is still more than 3 hours. And it is cool outside. And it's comfortable enough. There was no one in the house except Molly. The head teacher gave him a t-shirt and a tracksuit, not forgetting to put the kettle on. I believe your mother lives here too. Nick showed his knowledge. She did, sighed her colleague. Mom died. 9 days yesterday. She came here to sort out her things. But what to do with the house? I don't know. My mom was very sick, and just before she left, she gave me a deed of gift. So they're thinking of selling it or keeping it for Ethan. The guy wanted to get married. At least he'd have a place to bring his wife. Ethan was Molly's son. He was a year older than Helen and went to Polytechnic. Would you let the tramp stay here? Nick asked. What vagrant? The mistress of the house-me. Sadly, he replied. You know probably that I'm having dinner at my sister's, but I'm tired of embarrassing them. Don't worry, I'll pay. Yesterday I came back from a shift. I make good money. And then I'll find a place to live. What money? Molly waved her hands. You can live, of course, as long as you need. Was it a nice house? A big one with 2 vegetable gardens, a garage, outbuildings, and a nice garden. Nick took good care of the house, for which Molly was very grateful. Another question is who should thank whom? Nick grinned. When the landlady told him to thank you, she took in a hobo. Well, what kind of tramp are you? Molly objected. Just a man in temporary difficulty. She visited the mother house almost every day. Both the residents and the child began to guess what was the matter. A fiancé had shown up. Why are you, Molly, frequenting the village? One day the sales clerk remarked. I wonder if you're going to move there. Who knows? The widow smiled enigmatically. And when the villagers found out who was staying with her, everything fell into place. But Nick made no move to get closer. The coworkers began to speak to each other. But it didn't go any further than that. Molly realized that her lodgers needed time. After all, the man had recently gone through a difficult divorce. It was all settled on Christmas Eve. Molly's back from corporate. Beautiful, dressed up, new haircut. You look good. Approvingly, Nick said. That hair looks really good on you. All the men must have craned their necks. Maybe, she smiled. But it doesn't make any difference to me. And who's going to wring the neck of a drunkard who's old enough to be my son? Well, there is also a physicist, sneered Corver. True, I think so. Doesn't distinguish a man from a woman anymore. Well, you see, Molly waved her hands and laughed merrily. Well, I think that women are always pleased with a man's attention. You like ears. Do you? The widow asked quietly, looking Nick in the eye. I love with my heart, he whispered back. The heart of the woman, tired of loneliness, anxiously went down. Did it mean that Nick's heart was not free and it still belonged to Sophia? And yet there was still a tiny hope. The best counselor is the heart, Nick continued, catching her gaze. Now they were looking at each other. Molly suddenly realized she had a chance. Nick nestled against the woman's warm cheek, and he physically felt his heart thaw. And when their lips met, the man realized he was finally cured and ready to start life anew. You are very beautiful. Nick whispered, hardly tearing himself away from her cop. Molly only smiled. She wished if Nick told her that, then things would work out for them. Nick and Molly spent that Christmas alone together. They didn't need anyone. They talked about everything in the world, made plans, and they had the best time of their lives. How you celebrate Christmas is how you spend it, Nick said with a smile, pouring the rest of the champagne. So don't get your hopes up. It's easy to get rid of me. At least for the next year. Outside the window, it was already starting to get matchmaking. And the lovers were thrilled to see not only the coming year together, but also the dawn. Both saw it as a good omen. Could it have been any different on this magical night? I hope it doesn't happen in the next 20 years. Molly said quietly, snuggling into his shoulder. Well, that's a bit pessimistic. Nick stretched out with courtly disappointment. Here's the 30 thing. Molly, well, marry me. I realize I have nothing to offer you yet, but I promise it's only a matter of time. I have grand plans for this year, and shut up, Molly whispered, placing her fingers on his lips. If you were a beggar, I'd still say yes. I'm not a beggar. It's just him. I'm a tramp. My favorite tramp. To us, to our happiness. They drank champagne and went to bed. In the afternoon, a blizzard broke out. Nick shook his head sweetly. Shall we shovel the snow? And why do you want to yawn on a holiday? Asked Molly. My joy. It's only half an hour's work. Then it's gonna snow even more. And then you and I will have a drink. Some wine. Nick went out into the yard and took a shovel, as suddenly he saw how the ambulance, which had left from the side of the cabins, drove into a snowdrift and began to tow frantically. The driver got out of the cab and started looking around nervously. The doctor followed him out, and the men began to gesticulate frantically. Nick picked up a shovel and rushed to the car, which was about 200 meters away. Men. Do you need help? He asked, out of breath. How else? Exclaimed the doctor. There's an elderly woman with a stroke. We can't bring the old lady. The driver got into the car. Nick started shoveling, and the doctor tried to push the car out. Damn this blizzard. He cursed in his monologue with an expletive. The doctor pushed open the door of the patient compartment. Nick peered inside, and his hair stood on end. On the couch lay his ex-mother-in-law. Her mouth was curved to the left. One eye was closed, the other staring blankly into space. A nurse sat next to the older woman. Wendy blurted out to Nick. Do you know her? Asked the doctor. I do, exhaled Corver. And who is she to you? How's that? Do you have any contact with your ex-wife? No, shook his head Nick. I changed my cell phone not too long ago, but also. And the son, spat the doctor contemptuously. Drunk and sneaking around, I think he'll wake up and not remember that his mother was taken to the hospital, and he flatly refused to accompany. I can tell the daughter. It dawned on him the only number Nick remembered by heart. It was Helen's number. Notified, the doctor asked, and Corver suddenly thought he might not be able to reach his daughter. It's Christmas after all. Young people are out. Can I go with her? Unexpectedly, Nick volunteered. Yes, please. The medic shrugged. The driver continued to slip, and the car moved off. Thanks, buddy, shouted the driver Nick, and the doctor asked if he had changed his mind about accompanying the patient. Fortunately, his cell phone was in his pocket. He told Molly what had happened and asked her to go get a shovel. Nick's fears about Helen were justified. He didn't manage to get through to his daughter until the evening. God, what a horror. the girl exclaimed. And Mom is in Thailand with Dad Thomas. They'll be back in a week, but I can come. Come, daughter, but here's the thing, he hesitated. Anyway, I'm living in the village now. What are you doing there? Helen was stunned. Daughter, I'll see you later. Write down the address. After talking to her father, Helen was discouraged. What's so strange, though? Her father was able to find a woman and go to her in the village, and they spent Christmas together. This could only make Helen happy. Dad had found the strength to start a new life. He loves, is loved, and as a consequence, is happy. What more could a daughter want? Yes, but Dad said he was living there. Why not at his place? I'll come and see everything with my own eyes. Dad sounds like he's doing well, and if it's as good as I think it is, it's great. With a positive thought, Helen fell asleep. Helen managed to get a ticket only for January 4. The village was almost no different from her native village. Even the store building looked exactly the same as it had with the baby. The house where Helen's father now lived she found quickly. She knocked on the door, not boldly, and heard a vaguely familiar female voice. Come in. It's not locked. When the girl entered, she was stunned Molly. Helen exclaimed in surprise when she saw the head teacher. Yes, Molly, said the woman, embarrassed. That's the way it is. Where's Daddy? Is Daddy coming? There was an awkward pause. And Helen. Nick shouted joyfully and kissed his daughter on both cheeks. Daddy is touched, said the girl, hugging her father. I missed you so much. Me too, Nick admitted. Tears also appeared in the man's eyes. But thank God, you are here. And please come to the table. And yes, guys, let's go to the table. Having coped, finally, with indignation, cordially invited Molly. Dad, Molly, so are you together? With a smile asked Helen. Yes, simply replied Nick. I hope you two are friends. I'm thrilled, assured her daughter. I have 4 parents now, you might say. Sorry, stupid joke. But why? A silly one that doesn't agree with their father's choice. I, for one, am very pleased. After the first glasses were knocked back, and the first hunger was removed, Nick and his daughter started talking about everyday life. How's Grandma doing? Helen inquired. Grandma will now need a nurse and a wheelchair. With a sigh, the father replied. But even that's not the point. Sashka and his heroines don't want to take Wendy away. And why? Because they're assholes. Nick cut him off. Besides, Uncle, as you know, always liked to drink. What a sick mother. And if his son doesn't need her, what about his Natasha? What kind of horror stories are you telling? Helen shuddered, and this, daughter, is not horrors, but the harsh truth of life, philosophically remarked the father. I hope I don't suffer the same fate in my old age. No, of course not. Wendy was conscious and already knew that if it hadn't been for her ex-son-in-law, there was no telling how things would have ended. For 2 days, my ex-mother-in-law barely spoke about me. I mean, he saved my life. And I'm fine. Wendy? Nick smiled, squeezing her hand. The main thing is that you get better. Where's Sophia? Asked the older woman. And tears appeared in her eyes. She doesn't ask about Sasha. A thought crossed my mind. So she realizes that her son doesn't need her. Sophia has gone on vacation. How will she come back? She'll be back. She already knows everything. Really, her son-in-law reassured her. A nurse came into the room and said that the patient needed to rest. Yes, of course, nodded Nick, and walked out. He visited Wendy every day, fed the old lady from a spoon, wiped down Molly's cooking, and ducked out after her without complaint. You're a good man, the ex-mother-in-law said. And Nick smiled involuntarily. If a year ago someone had told Nick that his ex-mother-in-law would say those words, he would have twisted his finger at his temple. What was a year? A week. Nick was pleased to note that Wendy was on the mend. Her speech was no longer so frozen, but her leg paralysis was. As the doctor had assured her, was a matter of time. It was not only the doctor's merit, Molly assured her. A kind word is good for the cat. I think Wendy's quarrelsome nature was a kind of defensive reaction. But I think things are going to change now. Love and kindness works wonders. Hearing these words, Nick remembered what his future spouse had said. It looks like that's the way it's going to be. His Molly is rarely wrong at all. You're a very good man, Wendy repeated. Well, I'm flattered, Nick replied. Sentimental impulses. A few days later, Wendy was discharged. A couple of days before the discharge, Nick called his ex-wife, and Sophia assured him that she would take her mother back to her house. Admittedly, honestly, Corver was dreading this conversation. He himself could not understand the reason for his fear, but the fact remained. When Nick heard the voice of his ex-wife, he was surprised that he was absolutely not excited. They had a very nice conversation, and Nick even told his ex-wife that he would soon get married. Well done, Sophia said approvingly. I hope it's a worthy woman. You bet she is. I know her, the ex-wife inquired. You know, answered Nick with a grin. Molly, the vice principal. Oh, come on. Well, congratulations. You're gonna invite me to the wedding. Well, why not? The former spouses warmly said goodbye, and Nick felt as a mountain fell off his shoulders. Why, I wondered, was he afraid? As Parker gently coaxed his mother-in-law into the car. Wendy, are you comfortable? I'm fine, replied the old woman, and suddenly said, you know what I just thought about, and what is it? Nick, who was sitting in the front seat, asked, that both my sons-in-law are good people. Sonia has good taste after all. Both sons-in-law, as if on command, laughed deafeningly. Molly, who was sitting next to Wendy, also smiled. We try, Thomas said cheerfully and started the car. And waiting for her at home were her daughter, granddaughter, and a holiday dinner. 3 years later, a few days before the defense of the diploma, Helen felt indisposed. Everything pointed to the fact that the future journalist is in an interesting position. When the test showed 2 stripes, Helen cried. What are we crying about? He asked. After all, we wanted to get married. So the 3 of us are going to get married. That's all. Are you really happy? I'm really happy. 4 parents. What did Helen jokingly call them? They were happy too, and Wendy had nothing to talk about. So I'm going to be a great-grandmother, she smiled. Yes, nodded her daughter. Oh my God, I'm going to be a grandmother. That's so exciting. It's like a baby boom, Nick said when he found out he was going to be a grandfather. A year ago, he became a father for the 2nd time. Almost all the money he earned on his regular shift was spent on Echo. And in the end, Nick and Molly became parents to an adorable little dumpling. So the baby-to-be has an aunt who's only 2 years older than him, or a little less. Nick led the eldest daughter to the altar, where the groom was waiting for her and thought what a lucky man he was. And Sophia, Molly, and Thomas were thinking in unison that one should not be afraid of change. Change isn't always a bad thing. They knew that.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Happy graduates came on the stage. They were given certificates. Girls were given flowers and boys were given small gifts. Dear graduates, Clara, smiling ingratiatingly, took under her arm a handsome 40-year-old man in a dark, expensive suit who entered the hall. Tonight would not be possible without our dear sponsor, Christian Wilson. Let's welcome him. Flowers and gifts for our graduates, provided by his firm. She was the first to applaud, led him to a place of honor among the guests, and sat down next to him. Pay attention to that girl over there, nodded the director of the orphanage to the stage. Pretty, relaxed, the pride of our orphanage, a pleasant conversationalist can do a lot. Take a closer look. Not bad, quietly replied Wilson, appraising, looking at the graduate. But it's not the same. I'm tired of pretty faces in their 18, already gone through fire and water. I want a clean girl, not spoiled. She should be rustic, knave, but smart. I asked for a modest, simple girl, preferably pretty. Isabella Davis is invited to the stage. The hostess has announced. Who's that? Squinting, the man asked, scrutinizing the girl, who, smiling embarrassedly, approached the host. How come I've never seen her before? Well, Clara hesitated. She's so unassuming you wouldn't even look at her if it weren't for graduation. She's pretty sure, but she's very modest. She's a headache. Believe me, she can't do anything. She's hardly interesting to you as a woman. Clara got nervous. Trouble is, I thought she wouldn't notice Isabella. I had dressed her in a low-colored outfit, but the devil had noticed. The headmistress was upset because of the pupil. She loved her maternally and did not want the fate that was prepared by the dear guest. I'll decide who I'm interested in and who I'm not. Wilson cut her off abruptly. Just such a type, the limit of my dreams. Did you hide her on purpose? He looked suspiciously at the director. Don't disappoint me. You know I don't tolerate games behind my back. I thought that little gray mouse couldn't be the centerpiece of your house. How can she be dignified at social gatherings? She'll embarrass you. Believe me, she'll bring you grief. Meanwhile, the festivities are over. Christian, Clara have secluded themselves in the principal's office. I'm taking Isabella away from you. In an expensive leather armchair, the man said. I liked her right away. Listen. Clara frantically searched for a reason to refuse. She's just a girl, naive, unintelligent, but what if I sent Lisa with you? She's a quick-witted, skillful girl. I think she's closer to you than Isabella. I'm afraid she'll disappoint you. Clara was not in vain nervous. Her guest was a lover of young girls who had just finished school. The woman realized that, despite the unruly, cocky character, Isabella will not be able to fight back. Don't be so shaky. Christian grinned. Your son is safe as long as you honor our arrangements. Yes, I'll do as you say. I'm glad we understand each other. The man smiled sweetly and threw some bills on the table. This is for you to ease your conscience. I didn't realize you were so sentimental. If you care so much about this Isabella, it means I didn't make the wrong choice. He left, and Clara sat down at the table, dropped her head on her hands, and fell silent. What a scoundrel! What a lecher! She muttered to herself. I am good. I could not defend the girl. My heart is not in place. I am so worried about Isabella. But what can I do? Two dear people are at stake, and yet my son's freedom is more precious. The way things are, I can't let my child go to prison. And Isabella, God forgive me, I'm a sinner. In the morning, Clara went to the dining room where the inmates were having breakfast. Isabella, come here, please. Yes, Clara. Trustingly, looking into the eyes of the director, the girl replied. The woman looked away, uncomfortable with the upcoming conversation, but Wilson cornered her. And what are those people in strict suits doing here? Who are they waiting for? Isabella asked, entering the principal's office. Isabella. The woman paused. There was a struggle going on inside her, but she knew that the mother would win, and the principal would fulfill the wish of the man who sponsored all the big events at the orphanage. I'm very happy that you graduated from high school. You are the pride of this year's graduating class. I know you have big plans for your future, but you will have to put them on hold. Why? The girl looked at the principal, puzzled. Wilson is waiting for you at his house. Wilson? Our guest from yesterday? Clara nodded. She was visibly nervous. Why does he need me? I don't understand. What don't you understand? The headmaster suddenly shouted in a trembling voice. Didn't you hear anything about him from our girls' graduates? He liked you. I've heard something in passing. Isabella slowly began to realize what had been said. But I don't like him. I don't want to go out with him. One of the girls wanted to go to his house. I don't remember. Let them go in my place. I don't want to be his concubine. You can't refuse. Tiredly said Clara. He won't give up. If anything, he's made up his mind. I'm not going to go to him. You have no right to force me. The girl rushed to the door, swung it open. The exit was blocked by stout young men. They stared silently at Isabella, ready to twist her at any moment if necessary. She slammed the door shut and turned to the principal. "How can you do this to us? I mean, he's old. Have you sold out for money? You don't understand anything." Clara, nervously biting her lips, wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep warm. "He's a scary man and I'm on the hook for him. A few years ago, he saved my son, got him out of jail, my boy's freedom. That's the trump card Wilson is using, and I'm powerless. I can't fight back. He's blackmailing me. One day you'll be a mother, and you'll realize you'd sell yourself to the bald man for your child to be happy. So there's no chance of me getting out of here. Those are his guards at the door. I wanted to spare you from that fate, but he wanted someone just like you. He said he wanted a naive, modest girl, and God gave you beauty and intelligence to ruin. How many girls did he have in his collection? You're the fourth. And where did they go? Do you know what happened to them after they were in the hands of this Wilson? I don't know anything about their fate." Clara looked pityingly at Isabella. "I haven't tried to find out. So you send 18-year-old girls to a grown man and just forget about their fate. How's that? Doesn't it make you feel bad?" I'm sorry. Tears came to the woman's eyes. They agreed at once. No one resisted. She grasped Isabella's hand and spoke eagerly. If I could stop him, but my son's freedom is in his hands. You will understand me when you are a mother yourself. You'd better accept it. He won't back down. He's a scary man. He'll stop at nothing. Even if I tried to report him to the police, he'd get away with it. It's all been bought." Isabella stood for a moment, looking into the headmaster's eyes. In them, except fear and entreaty, she read nothing else, then pulled her hand out of the hands of Claire, abruptly opened the door and said loudly, "Well, if there's no escaping fate, let's take it as it comes. Let's go, boys." Isabella was returning from school, not far from the house, noticed her grandmother, caught up with her mother, who leaned with her back against the fence, sat looking at the surrounding with meaningless eyes. The girl slowed her step and stopped. Well, stood up like a stumbling block. Vanessa shouted, "Help your mother to the bed. I can't do it alone. You see, she's drunk again." Lord, when will it all end? Make sense of my foolish daughter. When will you get drunk on this vodka? Isabella obediently came and took her mother under her arm, but she couldn't hold her and dropped her on the ground. "Oh, you bastard!" Grandmother hit her, dry fist in the shoulder. Quite sensitively, the girl wrinkled from the pain. "You can't hold your mother. Hold her tight." The two of them dragged the mother to the bed. You didn't watch her again. The old woman scolded her granddaughter. "I told you not to let her out of the house. I was at school. How could I watch her?" Justified the girl. "We left the house together in the morning. She said she went to work." "What kind of job?" "She was fired last week. What am I going to do with them?" The old woman cried. "Both of them and their husbands drink like crazy, and you can't help them. Did you go for bread?" "No, I didn't have time. I'll be right back." Isabella ran out of the house, afraid she'd get another beating from her grandmother. "Isabella," a neighbor met her. "There's your father lying by the store. You should pick him up." The girl hurried to the store. Her father was lying on the side, sleeping soundly. "Daddy." Isabella shook him by the shoulder. "You won't wake him up." Some man said confidently, "And how can I bring him home?" The girl was confused. "Don't be sad. We'll help you." The man bent down, pulled her father by the arm and put him on the ground, then picked him up, threw him on his shoulder and dragged him. Isabella ran after him. Receive. Entering the house and breathing heavily, the stranger spoke. He carefully lowered his heavy burden onto the couch, straightened up, took a breath, and left. Where did you find him? Vanessa asked, making her father comfortable on the couch. Outside the store, he was asleep. The man volunteered to help. I didn't even ask. The world is not without kind people. Did you buy bread? The old woman caught on. No, I had to come back because of my father. You wretch! The grandmother swung and pulled on her granddaughter's back with the towel she held in her hands. Isabella quickly rushed into the store. What are you going to kill Isabella for? A neighbor showed up on the doorstep. You're out of control. Granny grumbled. No wonder. Parents who do not dry out for a day. The child is not needed at all. Somehow she's still studying well. Another girl in her place would have abandoned everything long ago. Yes, it's a pity about the girl. The neighbor lamented. You should caress her. The girl lacks love and affection. One day she won't be able to stand it and will do something. That's why we have to keep a tight grip on her, so that she grows up strictly, or else she'll go down a crooked path like her parents. Wash the floors. She told her granddaughter when she returned from the store. You've trampled here. I have no strength left. Okay, Grandma. The girl obediently took a bucket and a rag. You're driving the girl crazy. The neighbor reproached the grandmother. She doesn't hear a kind word from you. Is it her fault that both parents have gone crazy? None of your business. The old woman replied glumly. I can't cope alone, and parents are of little use. You should take pity on her. The friend lamented. But what is the use of that pity? Then she will thank me for teaching her everything. The mother should be an example, but not fate. Both of them should be deprived of parental rights. I don't think so. It's better to live at home with them than in an orphanage. The neighbor shook her head disapprovingly and went away. Grandma, can Cindy come to my birthday party? Isabella asked one day. She was going to be 13 in 2 days. Think about it. Where are you going to invite guests? Grandma frowned. Parents won't let them stay. They just want an excuse to get drunk. Then you'll be embarrassed. We'll lock ourselves in my room. No one will hear us. Please, Grandma. All right, Vanessa muttered. Just don't tell your parents. Maybe you'll get away with it. I'll make you something tasty. The grandmother hoped in vain that the mother would not remember about her daughter. She came in the evening with a bottle of wine. Set the table. She ordered her mother, shaking her hand, pouring vodka into a glass. Would you not spoil the party, Isabella? Asked the older woman. She has a guest. I have the right to drink to my daughter's health, and you are not my order. I gave birth to her. That's a good reason to have another drink. I drink with my own money. I'm not borrowing it from you. Can I have an appetizer? You'd better replace the electric stove. The wire's getting hot. It's not a bad thing. You're always dissatisfied with something. Angrily said the woman. You need, you buy, but I have no money. When I get a job, then everything will be. But until then, do not bother me. You and your husband will always have money for vodka. Vanessa grumbled, serving a simple appetizer. Isabella and her friend sat in the room for a while, watched cartoons, played, and went home. The girl was glad that her mother did not make a scandal like last year when Isabella invited her friends, and in no way expected that her mother would come home drunk from work and roughly disperse the whole company. The girl at that moment was ready to fall to the ground with shame. In the morning, she kissed her grandmother and ran off to school. Do not delay. I'm boiling borscht with your favorite garlic buns. The old woman shouted after her. Okay, Grandma. The day was going great. Isabella was in a hurry to get home. She was walking, facing the spring sunshine, and humming a cheerful song to herself. Wow! Approaching the house, suddenly noticed Isabella. An uneasiness stirred in her soul. Was there a fire? There were people in the street, cars, ambulances, firemen. Do you know who has a fire? She asked a woman who was trying to see what was going on up ahead. Isabella. The neighbor looked at her fearfully. Your house is on fire. How? The girl was dumbfounded and rushed through the crowd. Where? Someone called her and tried to hold her back. Don't go to the ashes, stop. Let me go, my mom's there. They grabbed her, held her down. She started to break free. Grandma, Daddy, let me go. Why are you standing there? We have to save her. She screamed, trying to break free from the tight embrace. I have to go to them. Isabella, they're dead. A man's strong arms shook her. You can't go in there, do you hear me? They're gone. Yes, they are. Why are you standing there? Why aren't you helping? They can't be dead. Don't you understand? They're out there. I'll find them. Let me go, please. The girl suddenly weakened, slipped out of my arms, sat down on the grass and wept. She raised her head to the sky. Mommy. The soul-crushing scream rose above the flames and vanished into the sky. Everyone standing around her was heartbroken by the cry. Women wiped their tears with handkerchiefs, men gritted their teeth, and looked sympathetically at the little girl's grief. People were quietly talking among themselves, watching the fire being doused. Suddenly it flared up, and I looked, and it was going up in flames. No one escaped. The firemen came quickly, but there was nothing they could do. They flooded to keep the flames from spreading to other buildings. Do we know what caused it? The cops said it was faulty wiring. Vanessa complained that the electric stove was sparking, but who'd listen to her? All dead. Good thing the girl was at school, or she would have been too. Why did the ambulance come? They thought they could save someone, but there. What a grief! I feel sorry for Isabella. Now she'll go to an orphanage. The girl sat in the grass and stared blankly at the house, tears running down her cheeks. She could not understand that she was left alone, without a home, without relatives. Come on, sweetheart. Someone lifted her up. There's no reason for you to sit here. Come and stay with us until the child welfare authorities get here. You must be hungry. Grandma promised me borscht. Swallowing tears, quietly said the girl. Poor you? Poor orphan. How unlucky you are. The neighbor shook her head. Isabella followed her obediently. Her strength to cry was gone, and there was a persistent smell of burning in her nose. She collapsed on the offered sofa, curled up in a ball under the blanket, and cried quietly. No, I don't believe it. It can't be. Mom, Dad, and the always nagging Grandma. There is no one. How can I go on living? You cry, sweetheart. An old woman stroked her head. You'll feel better. God willing, everything in life will get better. She sighed heavily. The girls were fidgeting in front of the mirror, trying on dresses for the graduation ceremony. The exams were finally behind them. Isabella looked dreamily at her reflection. I thought they would never end. Now we are free. You see, no tutors, no scheduled breakfasts, no getting up, no going to bed, but life will begin. Isabella, you're so beautiful. The girlfriend did not take her admiring eyes off the girl. You'd say so too. Isabella looked at herself in the mirror. I can't believe we've known each other for only 5 years. Yes, she laughed. It seems like a lifetime. She ran over to Kelly and hugged her tightly. You know, as strange as it sounds, I'm glad you ended up in our orphanage. I was always jealous. You're lucky to remember your parents. Yeah, lucky. I just remember them, always drunk. I never even knew mine. Do you remember when we were friends? Of course I remember. And Isabella got sad. The ritual, the new girl's registration. Everyone was laughing, and I was on the floor with a broken nose. You were the only one who stood up for me. From that day on, no one ever tried to mess with you again. Of course, because you fought like a tiger. Isabella laughed. I'm sorry we have to break up. I'll miss you. But we'll correspond. We'll return phone calls. I'll definitely come visit as soon as I get settled, and you come too. You finally decided to go to modeling school. Haven't you changed your mind? Well, can you imagine what awaits you there? Yes, the girl dreamily spun around the room. It's not for nothing that I earned my portfolio. Tried to participate in all the events. I hope they'll help me get through the competition. Yeah, with your looks, you could be an actress, not just a model. Juliet would be amazing in your performance. In our amateur talent show, you're unrivaled. Don't exaggerate. Isabella was embarrassed by the flattery. We have a lot of talented kids here. Thanks to her, my literacy is invisible. She made me participate in all Olympiads and events. Lucky you, Isabella. You know what you want to get out of life? Well, Isabella hugged her friend. Why are you so sad? We'll be fine, and you'll find yourself. Shall we go to the auditorium? They're giving out diplomas now. They say Wilson has prepared such presents for us. I can't wait to see them. The girls went to the auditorium that were already in full swing handing out certificates. Look, whispered in my friend's ear. Wilson here at the age, and yet nothing like that. Attractive and in good shape, his peers have long since grown their bellies, and this one is watching himself, and still that walker, not a single beautiful woman will not miss. The girl laughed, and still not married. I'd like to see the one he will marry. Who is she, anyway? Isabella asked, looking at the tall, broad-shouldered man with the piercing look in his blue eyes. You're crazy. The girl was surprised. This is the local patron of the arts. Everything we have in the orphanage is his merit. He gave us a computer class last year. Look at him. He's very handsome. Many of our girls have a crush on him. Uh-huh, agreed Isabella. But it's old. What do they see in it? You don't know anything about men. At this age, they are at their best. And what does it matter how old he is? Hotly whispered in her ear friend. If he has money, chickens do not peck. Anybody with him, like behind a stone back, a dream, not a man. How do you know? Isabella looked at her friend suspiciously. We're waiting for Isabella Davis. The girlfriend suddenly heard. Go. Isabella pushed Isabella, the girl. It's your turn. Imagine you're on the runway. Show everyone what the first beauty of our orphanage should look like. Let them gasp at your attractiveness. The girl walked to the stage. Returning to her seat, she felt the stares on her. Wilson was looking at Isabella in a way that made her uncomfortable. Why is he looking at me so strangely? She thought, and shivered under the predatory gaze of his blue eyes. It's like he's undressing me. I wouldn't want to be alone with him. Huh? She restrained herself. I thought, why would he want me? But Isabella was not mistaken. Christian was staring at her with a greedy gaze. I must have her. The man thought, gazing at the girl. Very nice. He smiled, satisfied, anticipating a night in the arms of the young beauty. Isabella felt uncomfortable, in the company of three scowling, taciturn men. Where are we going? The girl could not bear the long silence, trying not to show how frightened she was. Christian's country house. The man was silent. If you behave well, the owner will not offend. He likes obedient young ladies. The men laughed. It depends on what he expects from me. The girl thought to herself. One thing is clear, there's no point in begging him to let me go, and I'm not going to snot. Rose-colored glasses also long ago removed. I understand, not tea drinking invited. The only thing left is to accept the situation as it is, and then think how to get out of it. It's okay, I'll be able to stand up for myself. If you cannot escape from fate, you must take a chance, try to get out of poverty, so that no Wilson in the future no longer dare to drool at the sight of me and offer all sorts of abominations. I'm strong, I can handle this old man who likes young girls. I'll make him dance to my tune. I won't give up so easily. He doesn't expect to get me on a silver platter. Life in an orphanage had taught me a thing or two. And yet Isabella was scared, her heart clenched uneasily from the unknown. Here we are, the driver announced, stopping the car in the yard of a huge country house. Come. The guard opened the door in front of her. Christian is waiting. If you'll be good, you'll even like to be his guest. The man laughed, casting an expressive glance at her gorgeous body. Isabella entered the Wilson house and looked around in a hostess-like manner. Quite an environment, she thought. Plenty of room to spread out. Her courage was ostentatious. She tried not to think about what awaited her in the house. Isabella! Christian, opening his arms, went to meet his guest. I'm glad you agreed to accept my invitation. I'm honored. You may not believe me, but when I saw you on stage, I realized that this is the woman I have dreamed of all my life. You captured my heart from the very first minute. I promise you won't regret coming here. As I approached her, I grabbed her in his arms and began to cover her with passionate kisses. Christian. Isabella let him kiss her, and then slipped out of his embrace. Is that any way to welcome a guest? Especially a woman. She smiled slyly, though her insides trembled with fear and loathing. The man stared at her, puzzled by the question. What do you mean? Where are the flowers, the champagne? I was imagining a romantic candle at dinner, and you immediately kiss. I didn't expect to take a complete stranger without foreplay. I'm told you're a skillful lover. We should get to know each other a little first, and save the best for later. I agree, the bouquet and confection period in our case is a little irrelevant, but still I wanted to prepare for the main event of the night. Yes, he mumbled something under his breath. I wasn't thinking. It's a very important day. I'm entering adulthood. You're my first man, and I'd like it to be beautiful. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing? Eh? She playfully poked him in his slightly bulging belly with her finger. Did you want to save money on me? Or did you want to get me in bed right away? Is that really all you can offer me on a first date? She was on the edge of her seat, fear of the unknown forcing her to act brazenly. Isabella grabbed his tie, pulled him toward her. She didn't think that such an experienced lover would decide to dispense with the love game. The girl wrapped the tie around her fist. Christian blushed. It became hard for him to breathe. You witch, barely catching his breath? The man wheezed. This has never happened to me before. I like you, and I want you now. He suddenly grasped her slender wrists and yanked her sharply toward him. He forcefully put her on his lap and tried to kiss her, one hand holding her down, the other hand running under her blouse and squeezing her breasts. How hot you are, a delicate innocent flower. Let's go to the bedroom. I am overwhelmed with desire to possess you. Ah, you old lecher. Isabella shrieked and slapped him hard. What are you doing, bitch? Christian howled and grabbed his cheek. Taking advantage of the confusion, the girl jumped to her feet and ran a safe distance away from the excited man. She stopped by the hotly burning fireplace and grabbed a poker. "Don't come near me. I'll defend myself. Don't expect to get away with this," Wilson hissed, rubbing his cheek, hot with fire. "You seem to have forgotten where you are and why you're here. Don't make me angry. I can take you by force right now. Don't play with me or you'll regret it." "I don't want to," she shouted, looking at him with a burning, feverish gleam in her eyes. "How do you want it, my dear?" He smirked. "Rose petals in bed? Light music? Soft whispers and poetry reading until morning? I'm past that age. I prefer to spend my time making love. That goes without saying, but not now." The girl sat in the chair across from Christian. "I propose a wager." "A wager?" Christian's eyes widened. "Do you realize who you're offering this to?" Isabella remembered a conversation with a friend who said that Wilson was a gambler. "Yes," the girl declared defiantly. "You're a gambler, but if you sleep with me, what's the interest? In a week at the most, you'll be satiated and kicked out of the house. Thank you if you'll pay for the first night in bed with a virgin." "Naturally, I'll thank you." Insert man. "No woman would accuse me of being stingy. Money, jewelry, I am a generous lover." "That's understandable, but I suggest you entertain yourself in another way. Admit it. Do all your days resemble one another?" "Perhaps. Christian is wary. You boast that women never complain about you. I've heard that many try to get your attention and swear eternal love just for the money. You buy women, change them like gloves, and not one has ever said she loved you out of her heart and not for wealth. Yes, everyone's happy to be in your bed. I don't see where you're going with this, do you?" Wilson frowned. He was beginning to be annoyed by this willful girl. "But I'm not one of them, and you're not my type. That's not the kind of man I've seen around me." Isabella paused meaningfully. "But if you manage to make me love you, I will become yours without any additional conditions. Do what you want with me then, and when I get bored, you can throw me out on the street. And the second condition? But if you yourself fell in love with me to unconsciousness, then I will still become yours, but only through the registration of marriage. You will make me your lawful wife, with all the consequences." Wilson laughed out loud. "Do you know that I never lose?" "We'll see about that." The girl grinned. "Don't hope that the problem is so easy to solve. But I still don't understand. What is the bet?" "You'll be mine either way." He accepted her game. She hooked him, and the excitement of the gambler flared up in him. He liked the girl more and more. That's true, but everything must be consensual, without coercion. Those are the only terms we'll agree to with you. Do you agree? To hell with you. Wilson waved his hand. But now I want to make love to you. I've already put this moment off for too long. I didn't bring you here for a heart-to-heart. He made an attempt to get closer to her. No. Isabella gestured for him to stop. Nothing can happen between us now. You yourself agreed to my proposal. For the rest of the bet, no bed. We agreed to make love consensually. Are you ready to sign off on your own loss? That doesn't sound like you. So now we're going to separate rooms and that's it? Of course. Isabella explained impatiently, like an unreasonable child. That's the point of our pact, to fall in love for real. And then either you get me or I get you. And at the end of the bet, we'll have a long married life. You won't lose anything at all. You'll only get me a little later. But you'll taste the victory when it's over. An unforgettable night in the arms of a virgin. What, Mr. Wilson? Is it weak? Squinting, the girl asked. Not a bit. The man replied defiantly. How long do you suggest? 3 months. How? Enough time and your experience of seduction, young fools, to win my heart? Or have you already lost your youthful vigor? That you can't do anything but skim off the cream by sleeping with an innocent girl. And I thought I was an alpha male, a heroic lover. But in reality, alas, a banal suitor, unable to give pleasure to a woman. You know how to hit a nerve. The man was sure of his victory. Wait, you'll still be at my feet, lying at my feet, begging for love and tenderness. He thought, you'll be begging me not to leave you. Well, the offer is tempting. Christian said slowly, my life has lacked spice. The reward for the tedious 3-month wait will be an unforgettable night with you. Without doubting my success, the more I really won't lose anything. Just 3 months and you're mine. So, do we have a deal? Isabella held out her hand to the man. Deal. He shook it with his strong hand. And you yourself will be able to endure 3 months? The girl was silent. You won't. Isabella grinned to herself. I'll never love you, and I'll never be your lover. I'm not likely to win over a man so adept at lovemaking. I just need to buy time, and then I'll decide what to do next. Little fool, you don't know I've never lost a game in my life. Wilson thought, looking at the girl with eyes darkened with passion. With what pleasure he would now undress her and show her what he could do. But he decided to see what would come of the bet. And you agreed to her terms? Laughed at him Buddy when Christian, over a shot of cognac, a few days later told him about the pair. Yes, I agreed to endure these months. It's worth it. You don't realize how seductive she is, and you hope she'll fall in love with you. I do. Arrogant, Wilson declared. You know I'm an expert in female psychology. In a month at the most, she will surrender to the mercy of the winner, and I will triumph, having gained power over this little girl who thinks herself a seductress of men's hearts. In fact, I'll be her first man. Christian? His friend looked at him suspiciously. Have you fallen in love with your prisoner? Even if I do, the man said evasively, the reward will not be long in coming. She's still mine. And you're ready to take her to register the marriage? That would be fun. Wilson laughed, but I haven't decided whether I'm ready to give up my freedom for another pretty face. Although I must say she is clever. Isabella, however, has hit a nerve, Christian. Hoping to knock her down with the romance of a summer evening, he decided to organize a fancy dinner on his yacht. She wouldn't be able to resist. He told the captain, no matter how hard she tries to play hard to get, she will not be able to remain indifferent to a ride on a luxury boat. I'm sure. The captain smiled understandingly. She will reciprocate. No frills, he ordered the chef. A girl from the orphanage will feel uncomfortable. Champagne, appetizers, fruit, dessert. I got it, Christian. Anything else? Captain, have the deck decorated with balloons and musicians. I want some light music. We'll walk along the coast. The girl will love it. I got it. Captain trumped. Should we count on a night? No. For 3 to 4 hours, I think for the first time is enough, she will dance with joy. The man grinned. What has she seen in her orphanage? Let her see how rich people live. I hope she'll appreciate my impulse. No one has ever been indifferent to an evening spent on a yacht. I think she'll be no exception. The night before the party, Wilson checked everything, made sure his orders were followed exactly. Isabella, I want to invite you to dinner. The man expected that the girl would be interested in his proposal, but she looked at him indifferently and said, But I do not understand you. Rich, ready to spend money left and right. Don't know where to put it? Give it to charity. Why go out when I've made a nice dinner at home? I'm a pretty good cook, don't you think? It's not just any dinner. Barely containing his irritation, Christian said, I'm taking you for a walk along the river. Yes, Isabella couldn't hide her interest. But then that changes everything. She jumped to her feet. I'm ready. You're going to go in that? The man was surprised, looking at her worn jeans and stretched t-shirt. Why, it's not like we're going to a restaurant. Pretending to be a fool, the girl replied, and then she laughed. Relax, Christian. Give me half an hour and I'll clean myself up. You didn't take my words seriously, did you? We were not taught to behave like this in society, but I know the elementary rules of etiquette. When Isabella emerged from the room, Wilson gasped. Before him stood a gorgeous woman in a dark dress, just above the knees. Her breasts were adorned with a simple gold chain and pendant, and her thick mane of dark brown hair fell loosely around her shoulders. Light makeup made expressive, lively, green eyes. Slender legs in low-heeled shoes were striking. Christian swallowed nervously, imagining how he would caress those beautiful legs. I'm shocked. It was all he could say, wondering what kind of underwear she was wearing now. Are we going? Looking at him haughtily, the girl asked. Yes, please. The man ushered her into the car. The ship swayed impatiently on the waves. Waiting for the guests, the captain met them on deck, helped them to board gallantly, bowed his head at the sight of the girl. Good evening, he greeted. Glad to see you aboard the Aurora. Isabella, would you care for a glass of champagne? Wilson asked, waving his hand to the waiter. It will add a little romantic flavor to our evening, and also, he waved again, I love music. Do you mind? In the dim light of the lanterns, 3 musicians appeared, playing a quiet, slow song. Do you like it? The man asked his guest, taking a sip of his glass. He took out a gold bracelet from his pocket and put it on Isabella's thin wrist. I bought it for you. It's beautiful. The girl replied discreetly. Is this how you won the hearts of your mistresses? Were they ready to jump into bed with you? She glanced indifferently at her vis-a-vis. I wonder how much money you intend to spend on my seduction. I expected something more extraordinary. You obviously have problems with imagination. Did you really expect me to fall for this cheap romantic nonsense? No, I'm glad you're paying attention, but I was expecting something a little more sophisticated. I hope. She shivered, showing she was cold. We won't have to spend the night. You. Boiling, Christian. Ungrateful little brat. What have you seen in your life? Dinner aboard a yacht, with a rich man, the limit of your dreams. I can't believe you don't like it here. Why not? Isabella said calmly. I like it, but I dreamed of it when I was 14. Now I've wised up. It's all contrived, momentary. In half an hour we will finish champagne, eat dessert, and then you will try to seduce me, heated by alcohol. How vulgar, and not at all reciprocated. What do you want? Barely containing the anger ready to burst out. Wilson asked, I don't know. Isabella shrugged. Before you hit me in the heart, I want my soul to turn around and soar. For now, she stood up resolutely from the table. I want to go ashore. So everything I've arranged here, he gestured for the musicians to leave. You don't like it? I didn't say I didn't like it. The girl answered evasively. I said it was too corny to win a woman's heart. All right, then, let's go home. They said goodbye to the captain, who gave them a long and surprised look. At home, they went to their rooms. What can I seduce you with? Christian was racking his brain. What? A friend of his told him about his unsuccessful attempt to win a girl's heart. You couldn't handle a hottie. You're getting old, brother. You can't use your old tricks, can you? I should have gotten involved with her. Christian cursed in his heart. I don't know what she wants. Think of something unusual, by the way. I give you an idea. Take her abroad. She probably has not been there. The youth of today, they can't wait to go there. For a poor orphan, it's enough to impress her for a year. Why? The man's on fire. It's not a bad idea. If I get what I want, I'll thank you. You don't have to thank me. I was already wondering how it would end. It's been 2 weeks since Christian prepared the trip abroad. Isabella. Smiling enigmatically, he announced, "Tomorrow you and I are going on a trip. I hope we won't have to take a boat this time. I can't reveal all the details to you yet. Trust me. Wear loose clothes so you'll be comfortable. I have one condition." "What's that?" The girl looked at him suspiciously. "I'll blindfold you. Until a certain point, you must not know where we are going." "Agreed?" "Do you have to be blindfolded?" "Yes, otherwise it won't be a surprise." Isabella was blindfolded and brought to the airport. Christian helped her aboard a private plane, and only there was allowed to remove the blindfold. "An airplane?" the girl asked excitedly, looking out the porthole. "All my life I dreamed of flying in an airplane at least once, so I managed to impress you." "Let's put it this way," Isabella said discreetly. "I like the fact that we're going somewhere. I'm sorry," a few hours later, Wilson informed. "I have to blindfold you again." Isabella was elated in her heart. She had dreamed of traveling for so long. They crossed the helicopter. "I want to see where we are." Isabella fidgeted impatiently in the seat. "Be patient." The man stopped her. "Soon you'll see everything." When the engine died down, Wilson untied the blindfold. "Where are we?" Isabella exhaled in disbelief. "On the roof?" "We're on a rooftop in Paris, and there's dinner waiting for us." He held out his hand to her and led the way. The girl's breath was taken away by the beauty. The city was visible as in the palm of her hand. The warm wind was developing her dark hair. It was a little scary, but Isabella didn't give any sign. "Callie will not believe that I saw the Eiffel Tower with my own eyes," the girl thought. Her heart fluttered with joy, but she didn't want to admit that she was overwhelmed by the incredible adventure. Christian seated her at a table. A waiter appeared from somewhere with a bottle of wine. Another brought hot food. The waitstaff tried to be discreet. "Do you like it?" the man asked, seeing how her green eyes lit up. "I can't say I wasn't moved. It's a little trip," Isabella said. "But I don't understand. Why spend money on meaningless things? I wanted to do something nice for myself. To throw so much money away for an hour's dinner? That's just stupid. Are you trying to make me angry on purpose?" The man spoke softly in a voice that didn't bode well. "Yes, anyone in your place would kiss my feet after such a trip and pray to God for me. I don't see a queue of people falling at your feet in the house." The girl sneered. "Don't forget yourself." He flared up. "I can take you back to where I got you. I'm sick of your antics. So you're admitting defeat? What are you trying to do?" "I'm waiting for you to admit you lost my bet. Where's that famous seduction technique you've been bragging about on every corner? All you know how to do is throw money around. Of course, what better way to impress a silly orphan than with crisp bills? That's all you're capable of. It doesn't bother me. But that's it. I'm sick of you." Christian turned white with anger. "We're going back immediately. I didn't know you were so nervous." Looking regretfully at Paris lying at her feet, the girl said, "If we are here, why not enjoy the view of the City of Lovers? If I am not mistaken, it is also called the City of Lights." The walk along the rooftops was over. The man's up. You ruined it. A few hours later, they were home. You won the bet. The man announced. I'm trying to shake you up, and you're like an impregnable fortress under siege. Everything's wrong with you. Everything's wrong with you. You don't like jewelry. You don't like flowers because you have to throw them away. I don't understand what you want. Any woman in your place would have been happy to share my bed, but you persist in pretending indifference. I don't want to continue this game. I'm sick of it, and I don't want to see you either. So pack your things and get out of my house. Everything I gave you, keep it, and get the hell out of here. I want to forget you like a bad dream. Don't you ever set eyes on me again. If you say so. The girl shrugged her shoulders. Don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone that you can't impress a modern woman with anything. If you say another word, clenched his fists, gritted through his teeth, Wilson. I will not vouch for myself. Will you allow yourself to hit a woman? She made big eyes, and her heart sank into her heels at the sight of the enraged man. Isabella did not try her luck, silently packed up and left. Well, what have you achieved? She pondered, walking through the streets of the city. Left at a broken trough, what to do now? In the most difficult moments, she dialed a familiar number. Hello, girlfriend. Isabella. She heard a cheerful exclamation on the other end of the line. I was so afraid for you. I thought you weren't answering your cell phone. What if something terrible happened? I've heard such horror stories about your Wilson. He's not mine. Isabella cut it off. Don't listen to the gossips. Tell me, how are you doing? I'm wandering around town, wondering what I'm gonna do. Christian kicked me out the door. That's news. Kelly was amazed. What are you thinking about? Coming to the orphanage? Or do you want to go back to him? You know, I think he fell in love with me like a boy. I got what I wanted. I made him lose his head. That's why he's mad. What about you? What about me? I don't even like him. Then what are you thinking about? Come back. You'll be welcome here. What am I going to do there? It's too late to go to college. I can't find a place to live right away. Wilson left me some money, of course, but how much is enough? And anyway, why am I showing off? Suddenly, she said, marriage to such a man would open many doors. A modeling agency certainly wouldn't be an obstacle. Isabella, are you crazy? You don't love him. Can you imagine what it's like to live with someone you don't love? So what? I don't care if he loves me. I'm looking forward to marriage with him. I don't recognize you, friend. The girl said sadly. You've never been calculating. I didn't expect to be ambitious myself, but with his help I was able to realize all the plans I had made in the orphanage. Aren't you happy for me? His money will open any door. Isn't that what we dreamed of? Are you really willing to live with a man you don't love? His love is enough for the two of us. Isabella shrugged. I've been tormented by doubts, and now that I've talked to you, I'm sure I must go back to him. Isabella, come to your senses, wailed her friend. I know what I'm doing. I'm thinking more rationally now than ever. Bye. Thanks for listening. Isabella hurried home. She hesitantly opened the door, afraid of being ostracized, and reappeared. Wilson was sitting at the table. A bottle of whiskey stood beside her, almost half empty. And that's you? The man looked at her with a cloudy stare. Why did you come here? To make fun of me? Yes, you failed. Who doesn't? I came to tell you that I've agreed to marry you. An unexpected decision. He grinned wryly. I lost, didn't I? If you remember, there was a second part to the bet. If you fall in love with me, we go to register the marriage. You do love me, don't you? What does that change? It changes everything. I agreed to be your wife. You haven't changed your mind about marrying me, have you? Change your mind? Christian sobered up immediately. Yes, I've been dreaming of calling you my wife for months. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a gold ring with a large diamond. You see, I even bought a ring for my future wife. I didn't think it would come in handy so soon. He stood up, walked over to Isabella, took her hand, and put the expensive ring on her ring finger. Will you marry me? Yes, Isabella answered decisively. Though it felt as if she had jumped into a whirlpool. Isabella, hello. Hear the woman in the phone, a familiar voice of a friend. Hello, sobbing Isabella answered. Are you crying? Kelly was worried. I hate him. The woman confessed. He ruined my whole life. He hit me. Again? Terrified, exclaimed the girlfriend. Yes, Isabella cried. He came in drunk. I just asked him where he'd been all night, and then he started. He yelled that it was none of my business, and then he hit me. Good thing my son didn't see. I don't understand what happened to him. You always said he loved you. He did, but then it went away, and it all started when I had Brian. He still can't forgive me for finishing college, and I wanted to study. I wasn't going to bury myself in housework. He didn't like it. Good for you for not giving in and finishing your degree, even if it was by correspondence. It's a popular specialty, finance and credit. If something happens, you can always provide for yourself and your son. That's when we started to have disagreements. He was jealous of every pillar. You should have seen how mad he got when I hired a nanny for our boy so I could study. That's when he started hitting the bottle. He'd get drunk. He'd get out of control. The first time he hit me was when I accused him of cheating. You should have heard the way he screamed. I thought he was gonna kill me. Since then, he's never been shy about laying a hand on me. I don't envy you. I think I'm happy. I never felt happy, and now I don't feel happy at all. Alcohol has changed him beyond recognition. No trace of his former love for me. He's disappeared from home more and more often. I know for a fact that he spends his time in the company of strange women. Do you know how disgusting it is to see him with lipstick on his collar? Are you going to put up with that? No, of course not. I kept quiet for a long time, hoping he'd come to his senses, but every year it gets worse. How does he run the firm? That's the point. The firm was starting to die. I realized if I didn't take over, we'd go bankrupt sooner or later. You're doing great. You're going to do great. Yeah, but I've never worked a day in my specialty. So what? Prove to him and to yourself that you're worth something. You were the smartest among us. You can do it. Isabella puzzled over which side of the firm to revitalize. The first thing she decided to do was to talk to her husband about her son. Christian, I need to consult with you. Having had a moment when he was relatively sober, the woman spoke. What do you want from me? He was irritated, his head ached, he wanted a drink, but Isabella had locked herself in the study with him and wouldn't let him have one. Give me a drink, demanded the man. No, the woman said firmly. Let's talk first. You didn't get anything mixed up. What are you doing bossing me around? Have you forgotten where you belong? I might remind you, if you don't listen to me now, we both risk the abyss. She bravely endured his ominous stare. Well, speak, yes, quickly. I want to send my son to study abroad. What on earth are you talking about? The Christian burst into a fit of rage. I will not give my consent. You'll have to agree. Isabella said calmly, I'm sending him away because I don't have the opportunity to pay much attention to him. Explain? If you don't know, our firm's business is bad. You don't have time to deal with it. You've had other interests lately. The woman sneered. None of your business. Christian snapped at her. I'm fed up with you. Do you think I've forgotten that you decided to study without consulting me? My knowledge will come in handy now. I want to try to keep our firm afloat. What? The man laughed. You? What do you know about business? Without me, you're nothing. If I want, our business will go up, and you take care of the house and the child, and do not interfere where you are not asked. Right now, I need to intervene. I demand that you authorize me to sign documents. On what grounds do you demand it? On the grounds that I'm your lawfully wedded wife. You're going to ruin the firm. We won't lose anything. It'll be dead soon enough, and if I can save the business, fine, to hell with you. You've already succeeded once with me. The man snorted. Call a notary, I'll issue a permit. After all, I can always cancel all contracts. I think you won't have to blush for me. And Isabella began to master. Christian at first freaked out, and when he realized that his wife gradually began to get everything, sang blackly of his own impotence. How many times? The woman was indignant. You drink every day. I need your help so much. Why? You're doing a great job already. But you're experienced, you know the firm inside and out, and I have to learn everything all over again. I told you you couldn't do it. I can handle it. Isabella was stubborn. Just don't drink, please. She had no idea that a healthy-looking man could fall victim to an insidious disease. One night she stayed late at work. Why is it so quiet at home? Isabella wondered as she entered the living room. Christian, where are you? Did you go to bed already? I need your advice. I think I've figured out why things aren't going well. She looked into the kitchen. Her husband was nowhere to be found. She opened the bedroom door and was horrified. Christian, what's wrong? Isabella rushed to her husband, who was lying on the floor with his arm tucked under him. Christian, don't frighten me. The man mumbled, writhing in pain as his wife tried to lift him up. Christian? Isabella cried, startled by the realization. You're having a stroke. Wait, I'll call an ambulance. She called the doctor, asked the guards to move her husband to the couch. Unfortunately, you're right, Christian is having a stroke. Confirmed my worst guesses, doctor. His right side is paralyzed. I'll prescribe therapy, of course, but whether he'll make a full recovery, I can't say. We don't know exactly how long it was before you found him. The outcome of the disease depends on that. Doctor. Isabella grabbed the man's arm fearfully. I beg you, don't tell anyone that Christian is paralyzed. If partners and competitors find out about his condition, our business will be ruined. I'll repay you whatever you say, and I'll pay you for your silence. Good. The doctor looked at the woman in surprise. It's up to you. You're in shock now. We'll talk later. One more favor. Help me find a professional nurse for him. That won't be a problem. I promise I'll find the best one. What am I supposed to do now? Pray to God and don't give up hope. Christian, young man, he'll do fine. Isabella is immersed in business. Not a living soul knew that Christian lay a vegetable in their big house. Only the nurse and the cook were allowed to see him. Isabella. One day the secretary informed her. A rival firm wants to see you. What is it? Isabella felt a chill go through her. They didn't say, but they've set up a meeting for tomorrow at the cafe. Well, let them know I'm ready to meet. Oh, and tell the chief accountant I'm expecting 6 months' worth of returns. Half an hour later, the chief accountant showed up. Isabella, he began. I don't understand why you're digging through old reports. Chuckling to himself in a mustache, the man asked, why should such a pretty head have to bother with such dull figures? Christian, check them. I don't think you'll find anything interesting there. I'm interested. Try not to lose her composure, the woman replied. To understand why lately We've had lucrative deals fall through. Why the materials we partially paid for don't arrive on time? You can answer me these questions, can't you? Well, my dear, stretching words and hinting that she knows nothing about the affairs of the construction company, said the chief accountant. It happens, sometimes deals are broken and suppliers let down. It's all business. I need a full report and analysis of the working firm. If you can't give clear answers to my questions, I won't keep you. You're firing me. The man's eyes widened in surprise. I do not need people who do not cope with their duties and also let you openly laugh at the head of the firm. You're not the head of the firm. As long as my husband is sick, I am the head of the firm. If you don't want to follow my orders, the door's over there. Do you understand? Instead of helping me to save the firm, you're sticking your fingers in my wheel. Christian is sick, and you're happy to tear up his life's work, you ingrates. My husband has done so much for you. I see you get a good salary, go, work, and that by the evening, the report was on my desk. Isabella said firmly. Shocked by her rebuff, the chief accountant silently went to his office. Can you imagine? The man was indignant. She told me off like a boy. I've been working in this company for 20 years, she, without a year a week, and already in full command. Who is she anyway? Supported his colleague. We have never seen her before in our lives. They say she has not worked. How will she be able to save the company? Did Christian buy her diploma? Yeah, someone gets gold, but she gets a diploma. With that kind of knowledge, she shouldn't be in business. How did she manage to marry Christian? He was a confirmed bachelor. Don't you know how girls like that get married? With a figure like that, a face like that, you could seduce anyone. I can't wait for Christian to come back to us. I know in my heart she'll bring the firm to a standstill. I wonder how she'll sort out the accounts. She probably only knows how to spend money. Why are you going after her? Isabella's got an advocate. Let her try, see if it works out. Christian will be back, and her competitors aren't dormant. You mark my words, they'll try to get their hands on the firm. The next day, Isabella came to the cafe to meet with a representative of a rival firm. What did you want to tell me? Without further ado, the woman asked, How's your health, Christian? By your prayers. I don't think you asked me here to ask about Christian's health. Tell me what you wanted to say. I don't have much time. It has come to our attention, the man spoke softly, that your firm has been experiencing some difficulties in recent months. We'd like to help. Help how? We'd like to buy your firm out of your problems. Why would a pretty woman like you take on a huge business? You don't know much about construction, to put it mildly. Yes, things are a little rough right now, but it's only temporary. Barely restraining, ready to burst out of emotion, said Isabella. We are not going to sell the business. Christian is seriously ill. Will he be able to return to the management of the company? Don't doubt it. He is already on the mend. Perhaps we could meet him then and talk things over. Maybe he'd be interested in our offer. He's got his health to worry about, and the problems at work could aggravate his illness. Shouldn't you be so worried about my husband's health? The doctors are doing all the necessary procedures to get him back on his feet. And by the way, they don't recommend disturbing him. As I said, we have no plans to sell the firm. My husband is in the loop, and I'm coordinating with him. As far as I'm concerned, the business is in a critical state, and we're offering a good price. No, don't persuade me. My husband will soon get back on his feet and figure things out on his own, but in the meantime, I'm doing a good job of running the firm. I hear the employees don't trust you very much. I wonder how you know so much about our firm. Oh, I get it. There's an inside man on the payroll. Let's not talk about that. The man avoided answering. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. Isabella got up from the table. We had nothing more to talk about, so you'll consider our offer? I won't be able to offer such a favorable price next time. My answer is no. Isabella flew to work. We have a mole. How did I not realize? She thought. That explains everything. My job is to find it, and the sooner the better. She meticulously studied every document, even taking her work home. There in silence, she worked easier than under the gaze of subordinates, who frankly laughed behind her back, skeptical of her ability to pull the firm out of a series of bad deals. Imagine that. She complained to her friend. They don't take me seriously. No wonder. Callie laughed. With the way you look. Who's gonna believe you're good at accounting? That you're so smart. I have to find the mole, or our competitors will be working ahead of us. Think, analyze, concentrate, and then everything will work out. And Isabella, day after day, got deeper and deeper into her work. Explain it to me, please. Looking at the contracts, she asked the chief engineer, how come we refused to build a shopping center on such a profitable site? So their geodesist surveyed and concluded that the soil is not suitable for construction. Then why did the competitors start construction on this very territory? I don't know. The man was embarrassed. Who made the decision not to build? That's how he stopped talking. The address of the surveyors who did the report. So he hesitated. That's right. Their firm closed down. How is that possible? Why are you being so secretive? Get me the chief accountant right away. He paid for the work done, right? He must know the address of the company. The chief accountant entered the office cautiously, explained how it happened that the firm, which made a conclusion about the state of the soil on the site on which they planned to build a shopping center, closed immediately after signing the papers. Give me its address. I'll go to deal with it myself. So know the address, mumbled the chief accountant. I wonder how many plots we lost because of this fake firm. The men looked at each other in silence. You both immediately write a letter of resignation. Isabella ordered quietly but firmly. You have no right to fire us. The chief engineer shrieked. We were hired by Christian. Don't you dare poke me. I'm in charge of personnel here now. Get out, both of you. Isabella, the receptionist came flying in. How could you fire the most responsible employees? Christian wouldn't allow it. Christian didn't realize that these responsible employees had recently started working for the competition. Simply put, they were selling out, betraying their boss. If you don't agree with my decision, I will quickly find a replacement for you. Isabella looked at the girl expectantly. She shamefully kept silent. That's fine. Now you need to find replacements for these two honorable people. It is better if it will be found among our employees. Okay, I understand, but what should I tell the staff? I'll figure it out. The girl left, and Isabella took a deep breath, then got up and went to the conference room. Gather me the heads of departments in accounting. I need a lawyer immediately. Right away. The secretary looked at Isabella with respect. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the hall. I fired 2 employees. After a thorough investigation of the firm, it turned out that they were working for competitors. Now I believe our business will be more successful. I need your support. Christian has stepped aside for now. I'll need time to sort things out. If anyone is unhappy with the woman at the helm of the firm, they can report it immediately. The rest of you, I demand full commitment. If you have any candidates in mind, I don't mind reviewing their resumes. Any questions? Then let's get to work. The employees came out of the meeting puzzled. So much for the model. They marveled. And we laughed at her, but she was so clever. Even Christian could not find the moles, and she quickly identified them. So how could those who started the firm with him be suspicious? Don't get too excited before the competition finds out Christian's doing badly. If no one tells, maybe it'll be all right. But the competitors weren't dormant. Wilson's business was too tasty. They were getting closer and closer to the firm, probing for weaknesses. Isabella realized their lost interest was temporary. Isabella. One day, a secretary came flying into the office. I tried to stop them, but you shouldn't try to stop me. Pushing the secretary away, a handsome young man entered the office with a brisk stride. Isabella noted his lean figure, thick, dark hair, and brown eyes that glowed with mockery. He sat down in the chair uninvited. It's nothing to worry about. The woman calmed the secretary. I'll take care of it. Who are you? She asked as the door closed behind the girl. My name is Charles. I'm offering to sell me your firm. What makes you think I'm going to sell it? I'm aware of your problems. You're not the first to know my problems, but I'm the first to tell you we're going to get this thing back on track. If you have no more questions for me, please leave the office. You're interfering with my work, or I'll have to call security. I know Christian is paralyzed. He can't go back to work, and you don't know anything about construction. I'm amazed at your knowledge. Isabella looked mockingly at the intruder, but her heart clenched with fear. But Christian will be fine, and I'm not bad with finances for your information. I'll make sure you can't sign any lucrative contracts. Are you threatening me? In return, when Christian comes back to the firm, and he will, you'll be in trouble. We have a good reputation. You will not be able to ruin the business. If you do not leave, I will dig up dirt on you. I've already got material on how you've been diverting customers away from us through front men. I'll make it public. Are you willing to risk it? You bet your ass I will. Christian will back me up. He knows everything that goes on around the firm. If you try to destroy us, I won't stand by and retaliate. Bitch, the man hissed. It was nice to meet you. The woman smiled through force. She was nervous, her lips trembling. I dare not delay you any longer. I'm leaving, but I'll be back. Good riddance. Left alone, Isabella, without strength, leaned back in her chair and cried. Isabella, are you all right? Alarmed, her secretary asked, entering the office after the guest had left. Would you like me to make you some tea? Thank you, I'd appreciate it. And you are good, the secretary said, putting a cup with steaming tea. No one believed that you could manage the firm. I didn't believe it myself. Tiredly replied the woman. I had to learn no one knows what will happen to us next. I will not be left alone for a long time, these businessmen. You have successfully won the first battle. I think this is just the beginning. How much do I miss Christian? He's been in a borderline state for almost a month. There was a phone call. Isabella? The woman on the phone heard the excited voice of the nurse. Christian, he's awake. Roger, on my way. What's wrong? The secretary asked, seeing the change in her face. Christian came to his senses. I'm leaving now. Don't tell anyone yet. Isabella hurried home. She didn't know how she saw her husband and was afraid to meet him. Are you here? He turned his head at the sound of the creaking door. Christian spoke slurred. Isabella rather read his lips what he said. He was pale, a wry grin on his face, saliva flowing helplessly from the corner of his mouth. I'm glad you've come to your senses. She crouched carefully beside him on the bed, wiped his chin with a napkin. Leave us alone, she asked the nurse. How are you? There is no more of me, just a semblance of a human being. The man tried to smile. His face twisted even more. What about the firm? Did you manage to sell it? I managed to save the firm. You did? Christian's eyes flashed first with bewilderment, then surprise, then joy, then tears. I didn't believe in you. I was sure we were ruined. Think about it. How could I let everything you've built up over the years go to waste? How did you do it? I scrutinized the documents and found the moles. Who? The man marveled. Who are they? Your main assistants. I don't believe it. It's a good thing I didn't have an old friendship with them. I couldn't trust anyone, so I evaluated everyone with a cold head, and that's how I found the traitors. And our business immediately went better. The staff found in the firm, people responsible, most importantly, they believed me. It was difficult to shut the mouth of competitors. They were ready to swallow us, but it was not to be. I am not one of the fearful. I remember. Christian grinned with difficulty. I was able to fend off the first 2 attacks. The woman was silent, but we hope for your recovery. That you've come to your senses is a good sign. I'm not deceived. He looked at his wife carefully, and I realize my present condition is only a temporary improvement. I feel I don't have much time left. Don't say that. Hotly, Isabella exclaimed. You'll make it. No, I'm done for. I'm not getting my hopes up. He closed his eyes and was silent. Tell me, did you love me a little? He asked, after a moment's pause, looking pitifully at his wife. Don't lie to me. I want to know the truth. No. Quietly confessed the woman. I never loved you. I knew I felt you didn't love me. But I had hoped so much to be wrong. You're legendary in business circles, even have your own admirers. Ah, she picked up on Charles' mocking tone. I thought you were here to take over the firm again. I have another suggestion. Why don't we merge our firms? I'm doing fine. I don't need anyone's help. Isabella. Charles came very close to her, handed her flowers. She buried her face in them, savoring the fragrance. I liked you right away, that memorable meeting. I didn't expect to be rebuffed. I was told you were a beautiful doll with no brains, but I realized from the first minute that you were a smart and confident woman. I was afraid to admit even to myself that I was in love. You know, it happens, but you were married at the time, and then the funeral. I didn't want to be intrusive. I decided to wait, but now you're free. Why can't I tell you that I like you? And you come to me so easily after the threats I heard from you in my office? Forgive me. I'm ready to beg your forgiveness. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. In the fight against the competition, all means are good. I'm sorry. I realized long ago that I was wrong. You have a good tongue. Isabella laughed. It's the excitement. Charles confessed. What is it? Can I expect reciprocation? Charles, the woman grew serious. I do not want to give you hope, so I confess at once, I am not ready for a serious relationship. I've had some unfortunate experiences in married life. I'm just now beginning to live, to breathe. I was deprived of all this for many years to break free from dependence on my husband. It cost me a lot of labor and nerves. You can't imagine what I've been through. To go back into the care of another man? No way. I assure you, I won't restrict your freedom. I wish I could believe you, but I can't. Is there any hope that someday you'll reciprocate? I don't know. We don't know each other very well. Well, let's get to know each other. Charles came to life. I'm inviting you to a restaurant tonight. No need. Isabella headed for the car. I like to have dinner at home with my son. How do you feel about children, by the way? I didn't know you had a son. The man was surprised. Christian never talked about him. He probably never said anything about me either. The woman grinned. Yes, I have a son, and you'll have to earn his favor if you're going to court me. Did I scare you? So you'll let me court you? I'm ready. The The persistent suitor has perked up. Invite me to visit. I want to make sure that you are not only smart and beautiful, but also a good cook. If that's the case, then you're definitely my woman. Isabella got into the car, started it, carefully placed the bouquet next to her. The man looked at her with regret. Suddenly, she rolled down the window. If you want, come to visit me on Sunday afternoon. I'll introduce you to my son and feed you lunch. I'll definitely come. Charles exclaimed joyfully, looking at the car in which the amazing woman was sitting. I won't let you go anywhere. He promised. I will do everything I can to make you learn to trust again. My love can warm your soul. I promise you that we will be happy.